Chapter 1285. Given Yang Zhao's personality and the fact that he had been appointed Chamberlain of Palace Revenues by the Holy Emperor and was in charge of the entire Tang dynasty's wealth, he was completely capable of handling this transaction. How could he not be tempted to watch such a huge sum of 700 million gold fly away just like that? How could he endure it? After all, he had only printed 1 billion taels of gold yuan certificates in total. Worthy brother, don't look at me like that. I know that my actions were dishonorable, but 700 million taels of gold was already in my mouth. If I return it to the other party, the Confucians are being far too dishonest. Under Wang Chong's stare, Yang Zhao's voice grew fainter and fainter. Big brother, you're thinking too much. Not only have you done nothing wrong in this matter, you've even done the right thing. This isn't a mistake at all, but a great merit. Wang Chong heartily laughed. Greed was greed, but there were times when Yang Zhao could actually do the right thing. If Yang Zhao had exchanged 300 million taels of gold for gold yuan certificates, then the losses the Confucians and Arabs had inflicted on the Tang dynasty were no longer so unacceptable. At the very least, Yang Zhao had used a special method to stop the losses for the Tang dynasty. Yes, is that so? At this moment, even Yang Zhao was stunned. He had never imagined that what he had thought to be a massive mistake would actually be a great merit to Wang Chong. As long as you don't take the gold you exchanged for with gold yuan certificates, there's no problem with this matter. Wang Chong indifferently said. What are you saying? How could I possibly do such a thing? Yang Zhao immediately shouted, a little unnatural. Wang Chong silently smiled. Given Yang Zhao's personality, how could he not try to fish for some benefits? But as long as the benefits weren't too great or inconsequential, Wang Chong would not expose him. That's right, worthy brother. Besides the matter of the gold yuan certificates, I actually have a private matter that I would like to trouble you with. I would like to see if you can help me. Yang Zhao took a sip of tea and put it down. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. If there's anything you need, just say it all at once. As long as I can help, I will definitely help you to the end. Wang Chong smiled and said nonchalantly. Actually, I'm not trying to help you. Brother, you're smarter than me. This time, my younger sister asked me to pass on a few words. She hopes that you can help her analyze it. Yang Zhao said with a straight face. This time, Wang Chong was surprised. He suddenly felt that what Yang Zhao wanted to say was completely different from what he had imagined. He immediately showed an expression of listening attentively. It's actually a long story. You also know that my sister is infatuated with the Holy Emperor, but for some reason, His Majesty has become strange recently. He's completely different from before. Yang Zhao's brow creased, a look of recollection appearing in his eyes. The Holy Emperor. Wang Chong's entire body shook in surprise. He had never imagined that the second matter Yang Zhao wanted him to discuss would have something to do with the Holy Emperor. Everyone in the world knows how much the Holy Emperor dotes on my younger sister. In order to bring her into the palace, he almost didn't hesitate to fall out with all the civil and military officials of the court. But recently, not only has His Majesty been going to Yuzhen Palace less and less, each time he does, he only stays for a few moments, not even warming his seat. Sometimes, His Majesty and the Empress are talking and laughing, and the next moment, he suddenly leaves without any warning or reason. And now, even when my younger sister goes to see His Majesty, she is refused by the Holy Emperor for all sorts of reasons. This sort of thing has never happened before. When Yang Zhao said these words, his expression seemed to be extremely uneasy. His glory, splendor, wealth, and his current position as Chamberlain of Palace Revenues had all been obtained through his younger sister's consort Taizhen. If his younger sister lost her favor, everything he possessed would also vanish. This was what Yang Zhao deeply feared, even more than the matter of the gold yuan certificates. Buzz! Yang Zhao himself still did not understand, but Wang Chong was startled and immediately became alert. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly had a very bad feeling. I'm a little worried that my younger sister might have fallen out of favor with the Holy Emperor. Worthy brother, of all the people at this foolish brother's side, you are the one with the most ideas. Last time, It was you who wrote 2 poems for little sister that made her smile. Help me think about it. Just what is going on? My younger sister and I have thought about it for a long time, but we still can't understand. Did we do something wrong recently? Did we do something else to make His Majesty unhappy? As he spoke, Yang Zhao grew more and more uneasy. The gold yuan certificates were only a temporary threat, but Consort Taizhen's falling out of favor was the most fundamental. Wang Chong said nothing, but his mind was in turmoil. Yang Zhao and Consort Taizhen were still in the dark, believing this to be a problem of falling out of favor. But Wang Chong knew that the situation was completely different from what they imagined. Big brother. Other than the fact that the Holy Emperor has come less often and that he refuses to see Consort Taizhen, what else did the Empress say to you? Wang Chong suppressed his unease and sternly asked. The Empress didn't say anything. She only said that she could clearly sense that His Majesty's favor for her was not as great as before. In addition, whenever His Majesty leaves court, he locks himself in his chambers, and for a longer and longer period of time, no one is allowed to approach. That's right. One time when the Empress went to pay her respects, she heard the Holy Emperor muttering to himself inside. The Empress had intended to listen carefully, but Gao Lisher quickly came out and advised the Empress to leave. Now, besides eunuch Gao, no one is allowed to approach the Holy Emperor's side. What's wrong, worthy brother? Have you sensed something? Yang Zhao raised his head in confusion. Wang Chong said nothing. Countless thoughts surged through his mind. From his first meeting with the Holy Emperor to his subsequent morning court sessions, besides searching for the culprit behind the curtains, Wang Chong had actually been observing the Holy Emperor's condition. After all, the Holy Emperor was the true pillar of the empire's stability. But from his previous observations, although the Holy Emperor's aura seemed slightly chaotic, it was normal most of the time. At the very least, the Holy Emperor had lasted until the end of the morning court sessions, and there had been no abnormalities. As for what happened after the morning court session, Wang Chong could not see it, nor did he speculate. Wang Chong had always thought that the Holy Emperor's condition was not good, but at least it was much better than in his previous life. But now, after hearing Yang Zhao's words, Wang Chong's heart sank and he felt that something was wrong. If this was the case every time the Holy Emperor left court, it meant that the real situation was much more serious than he had expected. Worthy brother, worthy brother. At this moment, Wang Chong was roused from his stupor by a call. Wang Chong blinked and came back to his senses. He saw Yang Zhao looking at him with a frown and a puzzled expression. Worthy brother, are you all right? I'm fine. Wang Chong smiled and shook his head. Brother, you're smarter than me. Do you think that His Majesty has grown tired of my sister because he likes the new and hates the old? Yang Zhao asked, not minding it. Don't worry, that won't happen. Wang Chong smiled and comforted him. His Majesty's feelings for Her Highness surpass everything. In His Majesty's heart, no one will surpass Her Highness. Oh! Yang Zhao was skeptical. He should not have asked Wang Chong about such matters of the harem, but Wang Chong gave people the impression that he was extremely intelligent. Yang Zhao had unknowingly formed trust in him. Moreover, Wang Chong was like the sun at noon. If even you say so, then it should be true. Could it be something else? Yang Zhao quickly left. Behind him, Wang Chong looked at his departing figure with a hint of unease in his eyes. The next morning, morning court. Everything was as usual. Wang Chong stood at the end of the line and carefully looked up. The Holy Emperor sat high above, upright and dignified. He looked no different from usual, but Wang Chong felt a strong sense of unease. While Wang Chong was still thinking, something happened. Above the hall, just as the court officials were still debating, the Holy Emperor's expression changed slightly. He suddenly stood up and left without a word. In just a moment he disappeared above the hall. Today's morning court will end here. The Prime Minister will preside over the rest. At this moment, eunuch Gao suddenly stepped forward and said loudly with a wave of his horsetail whisk. Wang Chong's body trembled as he raised his head. The hall was in an uproar, but this uproar only lasted for a few moments before everything returned to normal. Respectful farewells, Your Divine Majesty. All the officials in the hall bowed, but none of them were surprised or surprised. Wang Chong's heart instantly sank. You've seen it all. Once the court session was over, the King of Song and Wang Chong descended the long stairway made of white jade. In truth, this has happened quite a few times already. At the start, everyone panicked, but they slowly got used to it. Moreover, the Great Tang has been powerful for so many years, and it has countless capable officials and generals. With the Prime Minister presiding over it, the Great Tang can still rule over court affairs, and with the supervision of the imperial censors, there shouldn't be too many mistakes. It's just that it needs to be submitted to His Majesty for review. So the last decision on Khorasan was also made by the Prime Minister presiding over everything? Wang Chong asked. The King of Song sighed and nodded. The two of them walked side by side out of the imperial palace. As if this was some sort of signal, the Holy Emperor withdrew from court earlier and earlier in the next few days. The first time, it had only been an hour early. In the end, when the court session had barely lasted half the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the sage emperor had ordered Gao Lisher to leave early. All of this made Wang Chong feel increasingly uneasy. Early in the morning, a ray of sunlight shone through the window into the study. A young figure was seated in front of a desk, constantly flipping through pages. Next to him was an oil lamp that had long ago burned out, and around the young figure was a thick pile of books and all sorts of ancient texts. Your Highness, according to the Fifth Prince's orders, we have brought all the relevant texts in the palace that we can. We have asked all the concubines, and princesses in the palace to borrow them. We just need to see if there is any information that Your Highness wants. Chapter 1287. In order to investigate the Holy Emperor's situation, Wang Chong needed all the information related to the divine martial realm. In this aspect, the common people could not compare to the imperial palace, so Wang Chong had invited the imperial palace's fifth prince Li Heng. Li Heng had always treated Wang Chong's request seriously, so he had mobilized almost all the resources of the palace. Even Li Jingzhong had been dispatched to serve Wang Chong. I know. I'll call you if there's anything. Wang Chong indifferently said. Yes, this old servant will take his leave. If Your Highness has anything else, please feel free to ask. In addition, His Highness has ordered that if there are any discoveries or developments, he hopes that he can be informed as soon as possible. His Highness is extremely filial to his father and is extremely concerned about His Divine Majesty. As Li Jingzhong spoke, he bowed to Wang Chong and quickly left the room. Once Li Jingzhong was the only one left in the room, Wang Chong put down the book in his hand and looked out the window. He couldn't help but give a deep sigh. At present, with Wang Chong's status and the assistance of Fifth Prince Li Heng, he was able to access far more books than anyone else in the world. But even after a sleepless night and countless books, he had still come up empty-handed. The only information he had found on the divine martial realm only mentioned that breaking into the divine martial realm was fraught with danger. Once it began, it could not be interrupted midway. It did not mention that failing to break into the divine martial realm would result in cultivation defect, causing one's martial arts to regress. Now that he thought about it in his last life, everything he knew about the divine martial realm and the Holy Emperor had come from legends and conjectures of later generations. In the entire world, there were only a few people who had touched upon the subtle realm and knew of its existence. Even the powerful imperial great generals knew nothing about it, much less the divine martial realm above the subtle realm. If it weren't for the Saint Emperor, many people would never have known that there was such a realm. Wang Chong had emerged victorious in almost every battle and was hailed as the new war god of the Tang dynasty. Even Qutayba had died to him and countless imperial great generals would flee at the mere sight of him. However, the more he investigated and learned about the god martial arts realm, the more Wang Chong felt that there was a huge gap between him and the Holy Emperor. Even though the Holy Emperor failed to reach the god martial arts realm and his strength was greatly weakened, his cultivation was still unfathomable. Even with Wang Chong's current cultivation, he still couldn't figure out how strong the power of the god martial arts realm was. But when he thought of what Yang Zhao had said about the Holy Emperor's situation in the palace, as well as the chaos that had descended upon the Central Plains after the Holy Emperor's departure, Wang Chong felt that he had to do something to stop all of this, even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance. Just as Wang Chong was actively searching for all kinds of ancient books, trying to find information about the God martial arts realm, something unexpected happened in the morning assembly the next day. By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees, the first prince, Li Ying as the eldest son of the first wife, is extremely humble, kind, and courteous. He is a role model for the other princes. Therefore, we have decided that the first prince, Li Ying, will take charge of the affairs of the court on behalf of the prime minister and the king of Song. Thus, we hereby decree. The huge dragon throne in the court was empty, and the holy emperor was nowhere to be seen. Instead, eunuch Gao Lisher, the director of the imperial household, strode forward with a horsetail whisk in one hand and the imperial edict in the other, and read it aloud to the courtiers. Boom! Gao Lisher's voice was like a heavy bomb crashing down on the court, causing a huge shock. In all the years that the holy emperor had reigned, there had never been a case where he did not attend the morning assembly and let the first prince take his place as regent. Moreover, according to the rules of the Tang dynasty, only when the emperor was preparing to abdicate the throne and let the future heir apparent attend the court would there be a regent. But His Majesty was in the prime of his life, and his martial arts were matchless. This sudden order made everyone feel uneasy. Eunuch Gao, what's going on? Where's His Majesty? Why don't we see His Majesty? That's right. What's wrong with His Majesty? Why did the first prince take over the court? In an instant, a group of courtiers rushed forward and shouted anxiously. Eunuch Gao, just what has happened to His Majesty? Wang Chong suddenly said. He had been investigating the failure to reach the divine martial realm this entire time, but he had never imagined that the holy emperor would so quickly withdraw from the court and hide behind the curtains, leaving the matter to the first prince. This gave Wang Chong an extremely bad feeling. The holy emperor's situation was even more serious than he had imagined. Buzz! The moment Wang Chong spoke, the entire court fell silent. Countless courtiers turned to Wang Chong and Gao Lisher. As the king of foreign lands of the Tang dynasty, especially after the recent events, Wang Chong's unyielding image had been deeply branded into the minds of all the courtiers. In the court, Wang Chong already possessed an extraordinary amount of weight, becoming one of the leaders of the court on par with the king of Song. Gao Lisher frowned and waved his horsetail whisk. Just when he was about to speak, a voice came from outside the hall. Let me answer this question. This sudden voice instantly attracted the attention of all the civil and military officials and all the people present. Even Gao Lisher turned in the direction of the voice. Right at the entrance of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, a golden figure, tall and dignified, wearing a four-clawed heavenly dragon robe, crossed the threshold and walked up from behind. The first prince. At the sight of this familiar figure, Wang Chong grimaced, a thought flitting through his mind. The first prince Li Ying slowly walked in, his eyes filled with disdain. The officials in the hall hurriedly lowered their heads and bowed. Your Highness! Your Highness! Li Ying held his head high and waved his hand, indicating that the officials should rise. Everyone, there is no need to be so polite. Imperial Father has been feeling unwell recently. In addition, everyone knows that Imperial Father is the strongest in the world and must have made a breakthrough recently. Thus, he has decided to enter seclusion and have Li Ying act as regent to manage the court. Imperial Uncle, Lord Prime Minister, I will have to trouble you to assist me in the future. As Li Ying spoke, his gaze swept over the Prime Minister and the King of Song. Your Highness is too polite. Prime Minister Li Linfu stroked his beard and smiled. Next to the coiling dragon pillar, the King of Song's heart chilled as he repeatedly said, I wouldn't dare. Everyone, I will have to rely on Milord's guidance in the future. Li Ying swept his gaze over the hall. We wouldn't dare. The first prince is wise and valiant. His Majesty's decision is not wrong. There is no need for our guidance. The officials hurriedly lowered their heads. Based on the customs of past dynasties, once the first prince became regent, the first prince was highly likely to be the future heir apparent, the next holy emperor of the Tang dynasty. At this moment, all the officials were filled with awe. The first prince held his hands behind his back and held his head high, walking step by step toward the dragon throne at the top of the hall. At this moment, the first prince was in high spirits, brimming with a disdainful aura. But as he passed by Wang Chong, the first prince suddenly stopped. "Ha, king of foreign lands, we meet again. Bzzz." This small action immediately attracted everyone's attention. Countless gazes were focused on the two of them. One was the son of the Holy Emperor, the future heir apparent. The other was the king of foreign lands, the invincible and victorious king of foreign lands. The mood instantly turned strange. Moreover, there had been a rumor that the first prince had tried to recruit Wang Chong but had apparently been rejected. "Your Highness is too polite," Wang Chong indifferently said. At this time, he was the only one who remained calm and composed. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back, fearless even in front of the first prince. "Truly a pity. You really shouldn't have refused me that day in front of the palace gate." A voice as soft as a mosquito suddenly rang out in Wang Chong's ear. Shocked, he raised his head and saw that the first prince was smirking at him. His lips moved but no sound came out. He had used a secret sound transmission technique. In the distance, King Qi's body twitched as if he had heard something, and a smug smile appeared on his lips. Before Wang Chong could say anything, the first prince grinned and immediately brushed past Wang Chong, heading up the hall. "Foul brat, in the end, your Wang clan still lost." At the same time, in the distance, King Qi smiled sinisterly and used a secret sound transmission technique. His voice echoed in Wang Chong's mind as well. Although he had suffered at the hands of Wang Chong and the Wang clan several times in a row, and even this time, the Holy Emperor had arranged for the first prince to act as regent and assist the first prince, the king of Song, but not him, King Qi was infuriated. But in the end, Wang Chong and the Wang clan still lost. He had always been close to the first prince. When the first prince ascended to the throne, the Wang clan would definitely fall out of favor. Wang Chong had expended so much effort, but in the end he still lost. "Your Highness, don't laugh too early." Wang Chong gathered his qi and faintly smiled as he replied. "You." King Qi was furious. But at this time, the first prince had already walked into the hall and sat on the Holy Emperor's dragon throne. This was not a good time to talk about it. Wang Chong chuckled lightly, not bothering to argue with King Qi. The first prince would never be able to ascend to the throne. This was something Wang Chong was certain of. The first prince and King Qi had laughed too early. "Wang Chong, the current situation isn't good. His Majesty is in seclusion in the royal palace, and without an audience, it's impossible for us to approach him. Furthermore, the first prince is now the regent, and everything is in the hands of the first prince and Li Linfu. On our side, only the king of Song has the ability to participate in politics, discuss matters, and make decisions. Furthermore, the first prince has never been too close to us. His Majesty's appointment of him as the regent means that there's a 50% chance that he will become the heir apparent. This isn't good for us." After the morning court session ended, Zhangzhou Jianqiong, the king of Song, Wang Chong, and Wang Zhen were all squeezed into a large carriage. Zhangzhou Jianqiong's head was slightly lowered, and a frown was etched on his face. Chapter 1288. Regardless of whether it's the first prince or another prince who inherits the throne, as long as we carry out our duties and remain loyal to our positions, as long as we don't commit any grave mistakes, not even the first prince will be able to do as he pleases. Ever since the empire's development, all of its laws and regulations have been passed down for several hundred years. This isn't something that the first prince can do as he pleases. If the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the commoners. Even the monarch cannot do as he pleases. The king of Song consoled. Even though he was surprised that the Holy Emperor would appoint the first prince as regent, the king of Song had always been an upright person. As long as he didn't do anything wrong, there was nothing for him to fear. "Lords, there's no need to worry. The one who will inherit the throne of the Holy Emperor in the future isn't the first prince." At this moment, a voice suddenly echoed in the duo's ears. Upon hearing these words, the king of Song, Zhangzhou Jianqiong, and Wang Zhen were stunned. They abruptly turned their heads to look at Wang Chong. Seated in this massive carriage were two kings, the Minister of War and a lower first-rank official. Each of them had an illustrious reputation, each of them wielding an influential status. If Wang Chong's words were to get out, they would assuredly cause a massive uproar in the imperial court. The first prince would surely view them as a thorn in his side, and he wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Chong, what nonsense are you spouting? How can such a matter be discussed so casually? By the side, Wang Zhen could no longer sit still. Looking at the upright Wang Chong, he harshly rebuked. Big uncle, don't worry. I know what I'm talking about. Wang Chong waved his hands nonchalantly. His words just now made the three people in the carriage shudder with fear and trepidation. But Wang Chong knew the course of history. No matter what, the first prince would never be able to ascend to the throne. Wang Chong, how can you be so sure? The king of Song and Zhangzhou Jianqiong glanced at each other. Wang Chong never did things without thinking. If he dared to say such a thing, he must have something to rely on. He was definitely not just making things up. However, the two of them could not understand why Wang Chong was so confident. That was no longer a guess. It was as if he was certain that the first prince would not be able to do it. The throne of the Holy Emperor has always been occupied by the virtuous. Other than the order of seniority, there is also the matter of character and moral character. The first prince's forbearance is quite good, but his character is a little lacking. Moreover, the throne of the emperor was related to the people of the world. The Holy Emperor had always been wise, and it was impossible for him to decide his successor based on age alone. Furthermore, if the Holy Emperor wanted the first prince to inherit the throne, I'm afraid that His Majesty would have appointed the first prince as the crown prince a long time ago. He wouldn't have waited until now to decide. Wang Chong said calmly. In the carriage, the trio glanced at one another, speechless. Wang Chong's words were easy to understand, and it was something that everyone understood. In the depths of the royal palace, it seemed peaceful on the surface, but in private, the competition was intense. The reason was simple. The Holy Emperor had yet to decide on the position of the crown prince. Even though the first prince was the eldest son of the first wife, and logically speaking, he should inherit the throne, as long as the Holy Emperor hadn't appointed the crown prince, the matter would remain unsettled. Let's not talk about this. Your Highness, there's still an important matter that I would like to discuss with you. Wang Chong quickly changed the topic. Your Highness, the royal court has conferred me a minor position of advisor-in-waiting, but it's precisely because it isn't a high position that I have a choice. Furthermore, as an imperial prince of the Tang dynasty and not a core official in charge of political affairs, I can be exempted from attending the morning court assembly. Now that the Holy Emperor isn't around, and you can keep the first prince and Prime Minister Li Linfu in check, I won't be attending the morning court assembly for the time being. In terms of decision-making power, I can't compare to the first prince and prime minister, and with the two of them around, it's almost impossible for any of our decisions to pass. But on the other hand, if they wish to further weaken the authority of the Bureau of Military Personnel, I can still think of a way to stop them. The King of Song nodded, not asking any further. The greatest benefit of the Holy Emperor's bestowing upon the King of Song was that he could keep the Confucians in check and prevent the militarists from further weakening. Wang Chong, do you have a plan in mind? Zhangzhou Jianqiong asked. Wang Chong had always done things with a goal in mind. Many things that didn't seem like much at the time would later be proven correct. Lion City in the southwest, which had saved the Annam Protectorate and Wang Chong's fief in Wushang, had been unremarkable at the time. But later on, it was proven correct and held an extremely important position. I truly do have a few ideas, but now is not the time to talk about them. Wang Chong calmly said, but his mind was thinking of Li Junxian and that mysterious Confucian sect. As the four were talking, a commotion came from outside the carriage, accompanied by cheers and shouts. The four of them suddenly parted the curtain and saw that the carriage had arrived at the illustrious Azure Dragon Street of the capital. A crowd had gathered in the busiest part of Azure Dragon Street, apparently discussing something. In the direction of the crowd, one could faintly make out several announcements on the walls. Someone, what's going on outside? The King of Song lightly patted the carriage as he spoke. "Yes, Your Highness." A respectful voice came from outside the carriage. But a moment later, a figure returned and quickly appeared outside the carriage. "Your Highness, the Confucians are putting up these announcements on Azure Dragon Street. The announcements say that the four seas are now at peace and war has turned into friendship. This is the era of the harmonious world, and the Confucians have made great progress in their efforts to educate the world. The Eastern and Western Turks have built 800 schools, and 27,000 who have enrolled in these schools to learn the Confucian culture and the language of the Tang dynasty. Uzan has built 400 schools with 8,000 to 9,000 students, and even some adult shepherds are being educated by the Tang dynasty. Mengshizhao has 200 schools with more than 6,000 students. Goguryeo has 300 schools with more than 7,000 students. Arabia has the most schools with more than 1,000 schools with more than 70,000 students. All the barbarians and enemies in the universe have put down their prejudices and been drawn in by the culture of the Tang dynasty. As long as everyone upholds benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust, there will be no more wars in the world, and the people will be able to avoid the chaos of war and calamity for a long time. Buzz. Before the King of Song and Zhangzhou Jianxiong could say anything, Wang Chang's pupils constricted and his face paled. Sush. Before anyone could react, Wang Chong flew out of the carriage. "The King of Song, Lord Zhonghe, Big Uncle, I have some matters to attend to, so I will leave first. Let's get in touch next time." As his voice echoed through the carriage, Wang Chong paused for a few moments in front of the Confucian announcement, and then he blinked away. In the Wang family residence, Wang Chong stood with his hands behind his back, his robes flapping in the wind. A few moments later, the Eagle, Zhang Ke, Su Kui, Cheng Sanyuan, and the others had all gathered at Wang Chang's side. "Milord, we've already investigated. Blue Dragon Street, Vermilion Bird Street, and White Tiger Street are the busiest and most crowded places in the capital, and the Confucians have posted the announcement." Cheng Sanyuan gasped for breath. He had been the first to arrive, and upon receiving Wang Chang's order, he had hurriedly gone to investigate. As soon as he heard the news, he had rushed over to report it. Hidden Dragon Street, Ghost Dragon Alley, Spring Blossom Street, and Autumn Rain Street, these places where the scions of the great clans often go to have the announcement as well. Su Kui added, "As soon as I received the news, I sent out all my men. I've already received news that the southern, eastern, northern, and western parts of the city have all posted the Confucian announcement. Milord, it seems like that group of people is coming with a ferocious momentum and is madly building up momentum." The third person to speak was the Eagle. He stared at Wang Chong, his expression extremely solemn. When Wang Chong had gone to Drunken Moon Pavilion to pay a visit to the leader of the Confucian sect, the Eagle had gone with him. It was precisely for this reason that the Eagle had immediately sensed the scent of a scheme from the Confucian sect's actions. "Milord, I have a feeling that the Confucian sect has come prepared this time. The announcement posted all over the city is probably just the beginning, and they will soon make other moves. Milord, I've obtained information similar to Master's, but unlike Master, our people have discovered that in many tea houses and taverns in the capital, some old Confucians are lecturing on the concepts of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, harmony is precious, and non-war. Moreover, when they are lecturing, they are using the relationship between the Tang dynasty and the surrounding countries to attract quite a few spectators." Zhang Ke bowed. Posting announcements, lecturing, Wang Chong stood in the back garden of the Wang family residence, his hands held behind his back. His eyes were half closed, countless thoughts flitting through his mind. The Eagle was correct. The Confucian sect, or to be more precise, the Confucian sect, was beginning to build momentum. "Milord, what do we do? The Confucian sect is coming with such a ferocious momentum, and their ultimate goal is probably us." Zhang Ke turned his head to look worriedly at Wang Chong. These words caused everyone to focus on Wang Chong. No matter what the Confucian sect did, it would ultimately target the militarists, and as one of the leading figures of the militarists, Wang Chong was bound to become their target. "Don't act rashly," Wang Chong sternly said with his eyes closed, his expression extremely calm. The Confucian sect is only publicizing their achievements on the desolate border. Even without them, we still have to do this. They still haven't revealed their goal, nor have they done anything out of line, so it's not a good time for us to do anything. Building new schools and teaching the language of the Tang dynasty were things that Wang Chong had begun in Khorasan, but now, the Confucian sect was doing it. There was actually no conflict between the two sides on this point, and not even Wang Chong could find fault with the Confucian sect. If something abnormal happens, there must be a monster behind it. The Confucian sect must be plotting something for making such a big fuss. But no matter what they want to do, they can't touch me for the time being. Their goal can only be somewhere else. Su Kui, write another letter to Su Han and Li Sai. Tell them that if something unexpected happens, they must endure no matter what. They can't be the first to provoke us and leave behind any evidence. Chapter 1289. Yes, my lord. Su Kui swiftly left with the order. In truth, Wang Chong had already sent quite a few letters to the northwest, but as long as it was Wang Chong's order, Su Kui would never doubt it. Walala! Su Kui had only taken a few steps when he heard the flapping of wings overhead. Everyone looked up and saw an eagle descending from the sky. On its right foot was a striking green piece of copper. My lord, it's a letter from the northwest. Cheng Sanyuan sternly said. Wang Chong's subordinates often sent messages, and different regions had different emblems. Thus, there was no need to look at the letter to know where it had come from. The eagle landed on the eagle's shoulder. The latter tore down the letter, glanced at it, and immediately paled. My lord, it's bad. Li Sai and Su Han have sent letters. Something has happened in the army. The eagle quickly walked over and whispered into Wang Chong's ear. Rumble. A single stone stirred 1,000 ripples. As Wang Chong took the letter from the eagle, his mind was instantly in turmoil. The letter had been sent by Su Han, and Wang Chong's unease and conjecture had been confirmed. With Wang Chong's departure, 3 Confucian experts had assumed command. Wang Chong's apparent demotion and the fact that he had been escorted away by the Bureau of Rights and the Golden Guards had infuriated the Chishi Protectorate and the mercenary army. Moreover, the Confucians' subsequent retreat from Khorasan and betrayal of their promise to the Sassanid dynasty and the rebel army had left the army extremely dissatisfied with the Confucians. Many Confucian experts had been sent to the army to supervise the army and suppress the Confucians, finally pushing the army's discontent to the extreme. Even though Wang Chong had sent several letters to Su Han and Li Sai to restrain themselves, there were some things that even the two of them couldn't control. At the start, there were only 1 or 2 people, but as time went on, more and more people began to talk. In the end, the 3 Confucian commanders were forced to issue an order forbidding any further discussion of Khorasan. Anyone who disobeyed would be dealt with according to military law. 3 soldiers who had been venting their dissatisfaction about Khorasan were discovered by the Confucian army supervisors and imprisoned. More and more people heard the news and began to gather around to participate in the discussion. The 3 Confucian commanders gave the order to arrest everyone. By the time Su Han and Li Sai received the news, it was already too late. This was because among those captured were the highwaymen trained by Su Han and the Wushang cavalry under Li Sai. The former had a fiery temper and was easily agitated, while the latter had lost so many men in 2 major battles, only to have all their efforts go down the drain. They were also feeling indignant about Wang Chong's injustice, so the Confucians had seized this opportunity and imprisoned them. Although the 2 of them had received Wang Chong's order for the army to restrain itself, at this time, as leaders, they could only participate in the resistance against the 3 Confucian marshals in order to protect their subordinates. The last thing the 2 of them did was to write this letter before stepping forward, telling Wang Chong the whole story. In other words, both Su Han and Li Sai have been arrested and thrown into prison. After reading the letter, Wang Chong's face warped. Even though he had done all he could to stop them, he had come too late. Su Han and Li Sai were the backbone of Wang Chong's forces. They had gone through fire and water with Wang Chong, fighting through 2 major battles, and Li Sai had been at his side since the southwest. Wang Chong couldn't just stand by and do nothing if something happened to these 2. It was precisely for this reason that Wang Chong understood why, when the Wushang cavalry and the ballista troops trained by Su Hanshan's highwaymen were captured by the Confucians and dealt with according to military law, the two of them had still stepped forward despite knowing that they couldn't do anything, standing up against the three Confucian commanders. Everything seemed normal, but Wang Chong could smell the thick scent of a scheme. The Eagle, I had Su Hanshan and Li Sai apply to be transferred back, and the Bureau of Military Personnel has already agreed. Why haven't the two of them done anything? Why are they still there? Wang Chong suddenly said. Ever since his meeting with Li Junxian, Wang Chong had mentioned to Su Hanshan and Li Sai that the two of them applied to be transferred back to the interior. Whether it was the capital, the southwest, Longxi, or even Yuzhou in the northwest, Wang Chong would have no problems. Given Wang Chong's current relationship with the various commanders, this was not a problem at all. In addition, the special environment in which the militarists and Confucians were fighting meant that there would not be any problems with the transfer of Su Hanshan and Li Sai. Moreover, Wang Chong had already obtained the approval through Zhangzhou Jianqiong. Not too long ago, the two of them sent a letter saying that they truly had done as Milord said, but all the documents, including the orders from the Bureau of Military Personnel, were stuck in the hands of the three Confucian commanders. The three of them used the lack of capable officers as an excuse to keep Su Hanshan and Li Sai in the army. The Eagle lowered his head and sternly said, "Bastard!" Wang Chong's expression darkened, his entire being turning frigid. If what he had said before was just a premonition, then Wang Chong was now sure that while everything that had happened in the northwest seemed to have been a coincidence, it had all been planned. Li Junxian. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind as he recalled that white-robed young man in Drunken Moon Pavilion. This battle, between the two of them, had come much faster than he had imagined. Help me contact Minister of War Zhangzhou Jianqiong. Tell him to have the Bureau of Military Personnel immediately intervene in this matter. In addition, immediately write 2 letters for me, one to the Anxi Protectorate and the other to Longxi. Ask Gao Xianji, Feng Changqing, and Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han to help me put pressure on them. In addition, if possible, have Biding Protector General in Sishan appear as well. All the great generals of the Bureau of Military Personnel are in the same boat. And Sishan should understand what to do. I'd like to see if they would dare to act recklessly with the combined pressure of 3 great generals from the Bureau of Military Personnel. Wang Chong's expression was as cold as ice. In addition, Zhang Ke, take my token and then go to the King of Song's residence. Take my and the King of Song's tokens and travel day and night to Qixi. The imperial court is one thing, but I'd like to see if they dare to make an enemy of the Bureau of Military Personnel and all the Protector Generals and Great Generals of the world in the army. 3 great generals, 2 great princes, and Minister of War Zhangzhou Jianqiong. This was an unimaginably vast force, enough to make anyone feel deep respect. Yes, my lord. The Eagle and Zhang Ke both left to carry out their orders. Cheng Sanyuan, immediately contact Minister of War Zhangzhou Jianqiong. I want all the information on those 3 Confucian commanders as soon as possible. Wang Chong sternly said, Your subordinate will go. Cheng Sanyuan hurriedly bowed. Su Kui, it is impolite not to reciprocate. Prepare a memorial for me. I want to bring all 3 Confucian commanders to the imperial court. Wang Chong turned his head in the direction of the imperial palace, his eyes exuding a dazzling light. Su Kui rejoiced at these words and hurriedly lowered his head. Your subordinate will go. Boom. Several hours later, when Wang Chong's memorial was delivered to the court and reached the ears of all the officials, it immediately set off massive waves in the capital. As the empire's illustrious war god, Wang Chong had an extremely high reputation both in and out of society. Whether it was his status as the son of heaven's disciple, his accomplishments in the northwest, or his status as king of foreign lands, Wang Chong's every word and action carried enormous weight. This was the first time since Wang Chong had become king of foreign lands that he had formally brought a memorial to the imperial court to impeach someone, and his targets were the 3 newly appointed Confucian commanders of the Qixi Protectorate. The moment this matter broke out, it immediately caused a massive uproar in society. Flap flap. While Wang Chang's memorial was causing massive waves in the capital, a white pigeon flew into a remote and quiet bamboo garden in the northwest of the capital. In the bamboo garden, a candle was lit. Behind the candlelight, a white-robed Confucian scholar was sitting upright and still, flipping through an ancient book. "Young master, what do we do?" The other side's counterattack was too fast. The Northwest only just began to deal with his subordinates, and now he's already begun to act, bringing them to the imperial court. In the military, we might not be able to defeat him for now. A voice came from behind Li Junxian, a bowing black-robed elder standing behind him. A black insignia could be faintly seen on his right wrist, indicating that he was an expert of the Confucian sect. Wang Chang's counterattack had been too swift and fierce. In their plan, they had originally planned to use Wang Chang's subordinates in the northwest to threaten Wang Chong so that he would hesitate in taking action. At the very least, he would be unable to divert his attention to other matters. But they had not expected Wang Chang's reaction to be so fierce, so sharp that they had been caught off guard. "Young master, in addition, our people in the Bureau of Military Personnel have sent word that Zhangzhou Jianqiong is already drafting a military order to pressure the 3 experts of our sect in the northwest." Zhangzhou Jianqiong couldn't have learned of this news so quickly. It must have been the king of foreign lands who informed him. Since the Bureau of Military Personnel has intervened, the other forces are probably moving as well, placing us in a disadvantageous position. "Young master, should we inform Wen Changqing, Tang Qingyu, and Li Fanming to release the king of foreign lands' 2 subordinates and all the detained soldiers?" Another voice came from the side, and in the faint light of the flames, one could faintly make out the silhouette of a young girl of 16 or 17. The girl wore a plain white robe, and her hair was as black as ink. Strands of it cascaded down from the top of her head like a waterfall. Her hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin without any decorations. She gave off a sense of tranquility and elegance, like an orchid. But what was most striking about her was the boundless energy in her body. If one looked closely, they would discover that the girl was actually barefooted and hovering a few inches above the ground. Her toes were smooth and exquisite, as if they had been carved from white jade. In the candlelight, they glimmered. Li Junxian said nothing, only slowly raised his head from the ancient scroll in his hand. The faint candlelight cast a slender figure on the wall behind him, exuding an extremely serene and tranquil aura. He was like an ancient well, a deep pool, incapable of stirring the slightest ripple. Chapter 1290. Wen Changqing, Tang Qingyu, and Li Fanming were 3 of the Confucian school's spies in the army. Given Wang Chang's status, if he really did report them to the imperial court, there was a 60 to 70% chance that Wang Chong would topple them. More importantly, Wang Chong could even use them to strike back at the Confucian school. This was because the information on Wen Changqing, Tang Qingyu, and Li Fanming was completely available. "There's no need," Li Junxian indifferently said. He put down the ancient scroll and slowly stood up. "This game has only just begun. Let them delay Tang Qingyu, and we will think of a way to deal with the Bureau of Military Personnel. Imprison his subordinates for now. As for the king of foreign lands, I will deal with him. He won't be able to do anything to them for the time being." In the northwest, it had not been them who had provoked first, but Wang Chang's subordinates who had disobeyed military orders. Even if Wang Chong reported this to the imperial court, he would only be able to save his subordinates, not deal with Tang Qingyu, Li Fanming, and the others. Li Junxian had thought everything through. Moreover, his goal had never been to deal with Wang Chang's subordinates. "Elder Song, has everything else been prepared?" Li Junxian suddenly asked. "Young master, be at ease. Everything has been prepared. Everything is awaiting young master's order," Elder Song said. Then let's begin. In the King of Song's residence, Wang Chong, the King of Song, Zhangzhou Jianqiong, Lu Tingji, Elder Yi, Elder Zhao, and the others had all gathered together. Even Wang Chang's little uncle, Wang Mi, had been summoned from Heaven Pillar Mountain. Wang Chong, the King of Song, and Zhangzhou Jianqiong sat side by side, while the others sat in a circle below them. This was the most powerful force in the entire imperial court. The Wang clan was still not secretive enough, and Wang Chong's residence was still under construction. It would take at least 2 or 3 months for it to be completed. Therefore, Wang Chong used the King of Song's mansion to gather everyone. Wang Chong, since everyone is here, tell us all the information you've collected recently. The King of Song glanced at the people in the room and suddenly spoke. Wang Chong did not conceal anything, recounting all the investigations he had conducted upon his return to the capital, including how he had locked onto Li Junxian through the Zhang Shogui incident. The only thing he concealed was the matter of the Holy Emperor. The Sage Emperor was the backbone of the empire, the main force that stabilized the Great Tang and stabilized the hearts of the people. If the matter about the Holy Emperor were to be leaked, it would likely lead to chaos and panic in the court. The room was silent. Everyone, including Big Uncle Wang Zhen, was listening attentively to Wang Chong's words. Everyone had seen what Wang Chong had done in the imperial court, but no one had expected that while everyone was still immersed in chaos, Wang Chong had already silently uncovered the mastermind behind the curtain. Truly inconceivable. So you mean to say that all the things that happened in the court in this period of time were the handiwork of a single young man? Elder Yi muttered, his voice brimming with shock. These old fellows had already withdrawn from the core of the empire and only had a rough idea of what was going on in the imperial court, not so many twists and turns. And at this moment, Elder Ye's sigh echoed the sentiments of the others. Who could have imagined that the Grand Preceptor, King Qi, and Prime Minister Li Linfu, these extremely important ministers, would all listen to the orders of a young man of 27 or 28? This was simply a fantasy. If these words had not come from Wang Chong's mouth, no one would have believed them. But Wang Chong would never speak without thinking. As long as he spoke seriously, even if he said that the sun rose from the west, everyone would probably believe him. This is also what I want to tell everyone. A young man of 26 or 27 could never have the ability to order around the Grand Preceptor and King Qi. King Qi has always been conceited and will never easily submit to another. Without the support of a massive faction, this is impossible. This is also what I hope that everyone can help me with. Everyone here is my elder and has seen many things. Perhaps you all know the origins and background of this Confucian sect. Wang Chong slowly said to the crowd. The other party was not alone, and Wang Chong could not rely on his own strength to fight against a massive faction. This was also why he had gathered everyone here. Wang Chong, are you sure that this is the symbol? The King of Song did not answer, instead taking up the unfamiliar symbol that Wang Chong had drawn. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on the black symbol in King Song's hand. Wang Chong nodded. The room fell silent as everyone carefully examined the thin piece of paper in the King of Song's hand. The black symbol on this paper was extremely strange. At first glance, it looked like a bird flapping its wings, but upon closer inspection, it was different. It seemed like a drawing yet not a drawing, like a character yet not a character. This old man can be said to have galloped across the world, weathering storms and waves for more than 40 years, but I've never seen such a symbol before. If you hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have even known that the Great Tang had such a powerful faction. Zhangqiu Jianqiong looked at the unfamiliar symbol and sighed. After a pause, he continued. But the more it's like this, the deeper the faction has hidden themselves, and the greater their intentions are. I'm afraid that I won't be able to help you in this aspect. Wang Chong's uncle Wang Mi said. Of everyone here, he was the youngest and the least experienced. As such, he knew very little about this matter. But no matter what, I believe that such a powerful faction would have left behind some clues. Wang Mi added. Wang Chong did not say a word as he looked at the others. The room was silent, and everyone had contemplative looks in their eyes. Actually, I seem to have some impression of this thing you mentioned. A voice suddenly sounded in the hall, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Elder Zhao. Wang Chong raised his head and looked at Elder Yi and Elder Zhao, who were sitting side by side, in astonishment. The two of them were former subordinates of Duke Jiu, and they were the oldest here as well as the most experienced. Elder Yi, do you still remember that 40 years ago, when the Holy Emperor first ascended to the throne, a member of the Confucian school presented a congratulatory gift to the holy emperor? As Elder Zhao spoke, he turned to look at Elder Yi. Elder Yi was taken aback. He didn't expect Elder Zhao to suddenly bring up a matter from several decades ago. Both of them were old, and there were many things that they couldn't remember clearly. Have you forgotten? Back then, that person bumped into you and left before the holy emperor's coronation ceremony was over. Elder Zhao reminded. Hearing those words, Elder Ye's eyebrows shot up, and a glint flashed across his eyes. He seemed to have recalled something. I remember now. Back then, there was indeed a member of the Confucian school who went to pay an audience with the holy emperor, and the holy emperor even received him in the Taiha Hall. As a result, the coronation ceremony ended half an incense's time later than the Bureau of Rites had predicted. Elder Yi said, "It was hard to remember so many things that had happened decades ago, but even something as important as the sacred emperor's coronation had been delayed. Furthermore, when everyone was passionately participating in this grand ceremony, and someone else had left early, you would remember that person. At the time, I noticed that the gift that the Confucian school presented to the holy emperor had this symbol." Elder Zhao said, "Buzz." Wang Chang's body trembled at Elder Zhao's words, and he immediately turned his head. He only knew that this Confucian sect had suddenly appeared after he had defeated Arabia, but he had no idea that it had also appeared 40-some years ago and that it was connected to the holy emperor. "Elder Yi, are you sure? Is it really the same as this one?" The King of Song suddenly said. Elder Zhao's words surprised not only Wang Chong, but the others as well. "There's no mistake. There aren't many people who can make the holy emperor delay his coronation ceremony," Elder Zhao solemnly said. Elder Zhao solemnly said, "But I only saw them once, and I didn't have any more information about them after that." If Wang Chong hadn't mentioned it, I probably would have forgotten about it as well. The trail ended here, and the room fell silent once more. However, being able to obtain information from Elder Zhao was already an unexpected harvest. In truth, I feel like there's a character in the center of this ink-colored symbol. Grand Scholar Lu Tingji, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke. Even Wang Chong was stunned by these words. He had been the first to notice the symbol, and not even he had realized that there was a character in the center of the symbol. In a flash, Wang Chong and everyone else turned to look once more. Disregarding the outermost patterns and inscriptions and carefully examining the center of the symbol, they hadn't thought much of it before, but now that they heard Lu Tingji's words, they realized that it really did seem like a character. But to say that it was a character was far from it. However, Lu Tingji was a well-read scholar who had dabbled in a wide range of subjects. Since he had said this, there had to be a reason for it. This shape is somewhat similar to bird seal script. It's different from today's characters. It's an extremely ancient character, one of the earliest characters. Very few people know of it now, let alone understand it. I only happened to see a fragment of bird seal script in an ancient text. With this, Lu Tingji suddenly stood up, grabbed a brush from the brush rack, and walked straight to the desk in the room. He began to spread the ink with his brush, but after a few strokes, he stopped and reached out to pick up the paper on the table. At that moment, everyone could clearly see a strange pattern on the snow-white paper. It seemed like a painting yet not a painting, like a character yet not a character. Although it was completely different from the ink-colored symbol of the Confucian sect that Wang Chong had drawn, it was at least 70 to 80% similar. I saw these characters in an ancient text, but I only know the shape, not the meaning. Lu Tingji said, "If we know that this is bird seal script, then it'll be easy. If we can find out the meaning of this character, we might be able to find out the origins of the Confucian sect." At this moment, Elder Yi finally spoke. Chapter 1291. I do know an old pedant who likes to collect bird seal script and all kinds of ancient books. He had all kinds of incomplete books, some of which even had a history of more than 1,000 years. When I was young, I always wanted to visit him. I sent him many invitations, but I never had the chance to see him. The ancient book I was reading was left to me by one of his servants before he left. If the old man was still alive, he would be close to 90 years old. Wang Chong, if you can find him, you might be able to find some information. Lu Ting said solemnly. That old man wasn't a member of the Confucian sect. He simply liked to read books. More importantly, he had an eccentric personality and didn't like to interact with others. Otherwise, he would have met him when he was young. Moreover, after more than 20 years, no one knew if the old man was still alive. Even Lu Ting felt that the chances were slim. Scholar Lu, what's the name of that old man? I'll send someone to look for him. Wang Chong said. Although the chances were slim, Wang Chong still decided to give it a try. The Central Divine Prefecture was extremely vast. Finding a single person, especially one that didn't like to live in groups, was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was extremely difficult, and this was the reason why Lu Tingji felt that his chances were slim. However, Wang Chong had gathered more than 80% of the great clans in the empire. Their influence was spread all over the 9 states. If he were to borrow their power, he might be able to find the old scholar who liked to collect ancient books. Wen Chou Shu, Lu Ting said. In an instant, the hall fell silent again. Actually, if you want to know more about him, there's another way. Suddenly, the King of Song broke the silence. Your Highness. The King of Song's words surprised everyone. Wang Chong's heart was also moved, and he turned his head to look. Although information on the Confucian sect was difficult to find, there was one person who did. The King of Song's gaze was like lightning as he slowly swept his gaze over the crowd. Without waiting for them to guess, he directly announced the answer. King Qi, Li Qingqi. After all, the King of Song had been in the court for many years. He was knowledgeable and had weathered many storms. Even Wang Chong was impressed by the King of Song's wisdom in the court. The Confucian sect can't possibly hide its tracks forever. At the very least, King Qi knows. With his personality, if he didn't know the other party's background and felt that the other party was qualified to cooperate with him, he would never listen to the other party's orders. Moreover, King Qi was proud and conceited. Of the 4 people, Grand Preceptor, King Qi, the Prime Minister, and the First Prince, King Qi happened to be the most impatient and the most difficult to keep secrets. Old butler, I'll leave this matter to you. The King of Song replied without turning his head. I understand. The old butler, dressed in a black robe, stood behind the King of Song and bowed respectfully. There was no expression on his face. Wang Chong mentally breathed a long sigh of relief at this sight. The King of Song, his big uncle, Lu Tingji, Elder Zhao, each of these people had their own experience and wisdom, which was why Wang Chong had gathered them together. A single thread does not make a thread, and a single tree does not make a forest. If they wanted to resist this unknown faction, they could only work together. And reality had proven that the King of Song and the others truly could provide Wang Chong with even more important assistance. Thump thump thump. Just as everyone was talking, a series of hurried knocks came from outside the door. Who is it? King Song grimaced and turned his head to look at the source of the noise. The mood in the hall instantly froze. Your Highness, there is a subordinate of the King of Foreign Lands outside. He says that he has an urgent matter and requests an audience. A voice came from outside the door. It was the captain of the King of Foreign Lands' guard. A few moments later, rumble. The door opened, and the travel-worn eagle strode in. Milord, there's a problem. It's news from the Kunwa training camp. The eagle's face was solemn, and he did not dare to say anything else. He got down on one knee in front of Wang Chong and respectfully handed over the letter in his hand. Wang Chong opened the letter. There were only a few lines on it. The first matter was that Wang Chong's instructor at the Kunwa training camp, Zhao Qianqiu, had been captured. The second matter was that the Confucian school had formally advanced into the 3 great training camps. Bzz. Towards the end, Wang Chong grimaced and stood up. The King of Song, Big Uncle, Lord Zhangqiu, and seniors, I have some matters to attend to and will take my leave. Wang Chong swiftly left, passing through the gate of the King of Song residence and boarding a carriage. Behind him, the travel-worn old eagle also entered the carriage. When did this happen? Wang Chong asked. It happened not long ago. I've already sent people to investigate. The Kunwa training camp isn't far from here. We should have news soon. The eagle said respectfully. Flap flap flap. Just as he was speaking, A messenger pigeon flapped its wings and flew into the carriage. More news came, but the situation was not optimistic. The Confucian school's display of proclamations throughout the capital, vigorously promoting its achievements, was only the beginning. While Wang Chong and the King of Song were exploring the secrets of the Confucian school, Li Junxian was leading the Confucian sect in setting their sights on the illustrious 3 great training camps of the Tang dynasty. Not long ago, an important piece of news was announced. The Tang dynasty's 3 great training camps had added a Confucian hall of benevolence and righteousness. Henceforth, the 3 great training camps not only taught infantry, cavalry, and archers as well as various strategies, but also added a Confucian education that emphasized benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom. If one did not pass the examination of the Hall of Benevolence and Righteousness, they would not be able to graduate from the 3 great training camps, nor would they be able to join any of the armies of the Tang dynasty. And if one failed the examination 3 times, they would be expelled from the 3 great training camps, unable to receive any further training or study. Absurd! Seated in his carriage, Wang Chong clenched the letter in his hand into a ball, his entire person seething with rage. The 3 great training camps had been established as a place to train generals, with the primary goal of learning martial arts and the art of war. The essence of war was to kill. The Confucian sect was now promoting benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom in the 3 great training camps, and they were even using this as the standard for the examination. This was the exact opposite of the original purpose of the 3 great training camps. As the instructor of the training camps, it was precisely because Zhao Qianqiu couldn't stand the sight of this that he argued forcefully, resulting in him being captured by the royal court. Lord, the 3 great training camps are established by the Holy Emperor, and their standing is transcendent. Not even the military is allowed to approach them. How could they possibly have the capability to extend their hands in there and issue such a ridiculous order? The eagle said grimly. The more he understood, the more fearful the eagle became of the Confucian sect. Their capabilities seemed to be limitless, and they were able to interfere in any matter. It must be because of the first prince. Wang Chong leaned against the carriage with a grim expression. The 3 great training camps are under the direct control of the Holy Emperor, and ordinary people are unable to interfere in their affairs. However, with the first prince presiding over the royal court, as long as they have a decree from him, the Confucian sect will be able to enter. Furthermore, as long as the Confucian sect uses the excuse of cultivating both civil and martial arts, they will be able to pass this order. Even though this matter had happened too abruptly and there was no further news, Wang Chong only needed a moment of thought to deduce the crux of the matter. Swoosh! While they were talking, another carrier pigeon flew into the carriage through the window. At almost the same time, a soft creak came from outside, as if someone had boarded the carriage. "Milord, there's a problem. I've just received news that the imperial court has just passed a decree forbidding the construction of any private facilities within 100 li of the 3 great training camps. All manors and buildings are to be demolished. Milord, Deflecting Blade Manor, is in trouble." Zhang Kei's voice came from outside, his voice growing softer and softer. There were far too many. The matter of Su Hanshan and Li Sai in the northwest had not yet been resolved, and the 3 great training camps were already in turmoil. Although there was no evidence, even a blind man could tell that the Confucian sect had come with a menacing aura aimed at Wang Chong. The 3 great training camps were the foundation of the empire, and countless future generals of the empire had come from them. Wang Chong's subordinates, Chen Burang, Sun Jiming, and Su Hanshan, had all come from Kunwa training camp, and Deflecting Blade Manor was Wang Chong's private territory and gathering place, where countless elite disciples of the 3 great training camps had gathered. Wang Chong had also used this opportunity to impart his own military strategies, using his own methods to train the empire's future generals. Deflecting Blade Manor was extremely close to Kunwa training camp, and with the imperial court's decree, Wang Chong's Deflecting Blade Manor was immediately demolished. There was no doubt that this order was aimed at Wang Chong. A storm was brewing. The Confucian school's attack this time was far more ferocious than anyone had imagined. In addition, milord, we just received news that the Confucian sect has dispatched many Confucian scholars to the various tea houses and restaurants to promote the concept of the harmonious world. In addition, the number of storytellers has also increased. Zhang Ke added from outside. Qixi Protectorate, Deflecting Blade Manor, Kunwa Training Camp, Confucian Lectures. The Confucian offensive was like a storm, and even the eagle and Zhang Ke felt an enormous pressure. Wang Chong said nothing, slowly closing his eyes. However, tapping sounds could be heard from within the carriage. Wang Chong's fingers were tapping rhythmically. "Stop!" Wang Chong suddenly said. With this order, the horses neighed and the carriage came to a halt. This order was so abrupt that the eagle and Zhang Ke immediately turned to look at Wang Chong. All was quiet, save for the noise of the crowd and the rumbling of the carriage. "Pass on my order. Use my name to gift Deflecting Blade Manor to Kunwa Training Camp. In the future, it will be the Kunwa Training Camp's training ground." A few moments later, Wang Chong suddenly spoke. He slowly opened his eyes. In that instant, his gaze was resolute and incomparably deep. Ah! Chapter 1292. Deflecting Blade Manor was Wang Chong's blood, sweat, and tears, and Wang Chong had spent a great deal of time and energy on it. Many of Wang Chong's subordinates had come from Deflecting Blade Manor. Moreover, in the Battle of Talas, they had swiftly revealed their astonishing talent. It could be said that the students of the three great training camps gathered in Deflecting Blade Manor were the foundation upon which Wang Chong had transformed the Tang dynasty, the army, and all the other factions. The pair had originally believed that Wang Chong would immediately rush to Deflecting Blade Manor to resist, but Wang Chong had chosen to give Deflecting Blade Manor to Kunwa Training Camp. But their understanding of Wang Chong convinced them that Wang Chong would not make this decision for no reason. Ah! Eagle let out a soft gasp as if he had understood something. Outside the carriage, Zhang Ke seemed to think of something, but for a moment he couldn't quite make sense of it. "Do you understand? The Confucian sect is borrowing the first prince's power, and the first prince is borrowing the holy emperor's power. If we fight the Confucian sect, we will be fighting the holy emperor. This is absolutely impossible. Moreover, the three great training camps were established on the orders of the holy emperor. The Confucian sect had long since anticipated this and had made ample preparations." Wang Chong calmly said. In his mind, he thought of that scholarly and handsome white-robed Confucian scholar. That Confucian sect leader called Li Junxian seemed to be only 27 or 28 years old, but his attacks were fierce and swift, like a tide that left no room to breathe. More importantly, he had thought it through thoroughly and had almost completely predicted the enemy's possible actions. Moreover, he had left his opponent very little room to maneuver. Although he had not faced his opponent directly, much less seen the glint of his sword, his opponent was far more vicious than he had imagined. Wang Chong had faced many opponents, but very few of them could compare to this Li Junxian. Rather than wait for them to tear down Deflecting Blade Manor, why don't we give it to Kunwa Training Camp? Although nothing can return to the past, at the very least, the Confucian school will no longer be able to interfere. We can also do our best to preserve Deflecting Blade Manor. Wang Chong sternly said. Your subordinate understands. Old Eagle sternly said, his heart filled with admiration as he gazed at Wang Chong's young and determined face. The Confucian sect had come with such ferocious momentum that not even the Confucian sect could deal with it. Of Blade Manor. The Confucian sect had been so fierce that even the Confucian sect had been defeated. Zhang Ke, help me immediately contact the Bureau of Military Personnel and the Protector Generals and Great Generals of the Border Protectorates. Immediately propose that we use the Bureau of Military Personnel's name to establish a new Commander Star base that will help the Border Protectorates groom Commander Stars. Recruit all the candidates who have been expelled by the Reni Hall and the 3 great training camps to the general base. Also, ensure that all the qualified students are sent to the various protectorates through the channels of the Ministry of Military Affairs. Wang Chong looked ahead. His eyes were deep and filled with wisdom. His vision seemed to be able to see into the endless distance. In addition, send a letter for me to Geshu Han, and Sishun, Xinyu Zhongtong, Gao Xianji, Zhang Shogui, and all the other protector generals and great generals. Tell them that I will be teaching them the art of war at the commander base. As long as they strongly supported and signed on, at least 10% of the people in the base would be transferred to their army. After seeing my performance at Talas and Karasan, I am confident that they will not refuse. Once the 5 protector generals, Bureau of Military Personnel, and Minister of Military Personnel Zhangqiu Jianxiong were able to bypass the royal family and officially establish the decree. As long as they didn't establish Wang Chong's private army in the end, all of the troops could be sent to the various desolate borders. Not even the Confucian sect would be able to do anything. A string of orders was issued. The Eagle and Zhang Ke had been worried when they first received the news, but when they heard Wang Chong's orders, they immediately calmed down. No matter who this Li Junxian was or what the background of the Confucian sect was, they had truly chosen the wrong opponent this time. Yes, your subordinate will see to it. The two of them replied in unison. In addition, do you know where Zhao Qianqiu is being imprisoned? Wang Chong suddenly asked. No matter what sort of strategy Li Junxian had, he would not be able to pose an effective threat to Wang Chong. All Wang Chong truly cared about was Zhao Qianqiu's safety. Zhao Qianqiu was Wang Chong's first and only instructor, and Wang Chong had always been filled with admiration for him. My lord, we have already investigated. After Lord Zhao was captured in Kunwa training camp, he was sent back to the capital and imprisoned in the penal court. Zhang Ke bowed. Wang Chong blinked at these words. Based on the rules of the imperial court, generals who committed crimes in the army would be sent to the Bureau of Military Personnel, crimes committed by the people would be sent to the Bureau of Punishments, crimes involving the imperial court or members of the imperial clan would be sent to the Court of Judicial Review, and those outside of these 3 would be sent to the penal court. This was a place specifically used to deal with special crimes. And the supervisor of the penal court just so happened to be King Qi. The words penal court made it clear that there was no need to say anything more. Let's go to the penal court, Wang Chong sternly said. The penal court was located in the northwest corner of the imperial palace. This place was remote and had the least number of people in the capital. Moreover, because of its special location, this place belonged to the imperial clan, and ordinary people were not allowed to approach. Boom! There was a world-shaking explosion, and waves of qi surged out. Miserable screams rang out as the fully armored guards of the penal court were sent flying like kites with their strings cut. While he was still in the air, his armor and the weapon in his hand were already shattered by the ferocious stellar energy. Wang Chong led the Eagle and Zhang Ke forward like a hot knife through butter. This is the penal court. Cries of alarm and fury resounded through the air as the experts of the penal court rushed in from all directions, flustered and exasperated. But as these experts charged forward, none of them could get within 3 zhang of Wang Chong. They were either torn apart, sent flying, or sent spinning like a compass. Almost no one was able to get close. Where is Zhao Qianqiu being imprisoned? Wang Chong extended a palm, and an expert of the penal court flew through the air like a rag doll and landed in Wang Chong's hand. Wang Chong's fingers tightened around the penal court expert's neck like a pair of iron pincers, lifting him up into the air like a little chicken. I won't tell you. Lord King Qi has already received the news and will immediately rush over. You can't escape. This penal temple expert's face was completely red. He was shocked and scared, but he refused to say anything no matter what. In front of me, it doesn't matter how stubborn you are. With a thought, Wang Chong sent an enormous stream of psychic energy into the penal court expert's mind. After encountering a weak resistance, Wang Chong's psychic energy sank into the expert's mind. Penal court, prison 22. Wang Chong muttered to himself. With a bang, he smashed the penal court expert into the 10-some experts behind him, sending them tumbling to the ground. Rumble! Another wave of stellar energy swept through the area, and Wang Chong's momentum allowed him to pass through the hundreds of experts of the penal court and force his way into the depths of the prison. The penal court's underground prison was eerie and frightening. Prisoners with disheveled hair were imprisoned here, and their bodies were covered in wounds. It was clear that they had been tortured. Wang Chong grew even more furious at this sight. If King Qi and the others had tortured Zhao Qianqiu, Wang Chong would never let them off the hook. Lord Zhao, Zhang Ke and the eagle followed Wang Chong, striding toward prison 22. But when the two of them arrived at prison 22, they were struck dumb. Looking at the situation in the prison, the two of them were stunned. Neither of them could say a word. The eagle, Zhang Ke. When Wang Chong saw the state of prison 22, his eyes narrowed and his voice came to an abrupt halt. The prison was completely empty. There was not a single person in sight. Impossible. This was Wang Chong's first reaction. He had rushed over not long after Zhao Qianqiu had been captured, and Wang Chong had interrogated Zhao Qianqiu's location from the penal court expert's mind. This sort of testimony could not be faked. Check the other prisons and see if they've been moved. Wang Chong immediately said, "Yes, my lord." The eagle and Zhang Ke immediately moved toward the other prisons. Meanwhile, Wang Chong's gaze quickly fell on a prison guard that he had just sent flying. A surge of psychic energy shot into the prison guard's mind, but a moment later, when he read the message, Wang Chong's body trembled and his brows furrowed. However, the tension on his face immediately dissipated. Zhao Qianqiu had been rescued. This was the information Wang Chong had obtained from the prison guard's mind. Not long before he had arrived, a black-robed man of high status had appeared in the penal court and forcibly taken Zhao Qianqiu away from prison 22. Judging from the situation at the time, this black-robed man seemed to be an enemy rather than a friend, as the men of the penal court had even tried to stop him. What's going on here? Wang Chong was silent, his mind filled with questions. He hadn't expected such a situation before he came. King Qi was known for his domineering and arrogant personality. No ordinary person was capable of rescuing someone from his penal court. More importantly, Wang Chong had known Zhao Qianqiu for a long time, but he had never heard the latter say that he was acquainted with such a powerful existence. Could that legend be true? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. In truth, there were many rumors circulating in the capital regarding Zhao Qianqiu. Of which, the most widespread rumor was that Zhao Qianqiu had a powerful backer behind him, and related to this rumor was that Zhao Qianqiu was able to become the head instructor of Kunhua training camp despite having no significant background, and his standing in the camp far surpassed the other instructors. Chapter 1293. Lord Zhao, I truly underestimated you. It seems you have quite a few secrets on your body. Looking at the empty cell 22, a smile slowly crept onto Wang Chong's lips. Zhang Ke, the eagle, there's no need to look. Let's go. Wang Chong suddenly said. After saying this, he turned and left the penal court. This order was so sudden that the eagle and Zhang Ke glanced at each other in dismay. However, there was no time to think, and the two of them rushed out in pursuit. When he walked out of the dark and gloomy prison of the penal court, he immediately heard a furious voice coming from afar. Wang Chong, you're simply out of control. You actually dare to come to the penal court to fish people out. Do you really think this king can't deal with you? Wang Chong raised his head and saw a sea of people outside the penal court. Countless experts had gathered at the gates, tightly surrounding the penal court. At the center of this crowd was King Qi, dressed in imperial robes, his face dark and gloomy. He was being escorted by a group of people, seething with killing intent. King Qi's complexion was extremely unsightly. If looks could kill, Wang Chong would already be dead countless times over. Wang Chong's gaze swept the area. Other than the penal court's experts, there was also a tight barrier outside. Countless fully armored experts were surging in. These were all experts that King Qi had brought with him upon hearing the news. Wang Chong only sneered at this sight. Raising his robes, he walked forward as if there was no one around. He had already charged through the battlefield with thousands of soldiers, so he truly didn't care about these experts that King Qi had brought. So what if I'm fishing people out? Since when did you have the right to capture the instructors of the Kunhua training camp? Wang Chong's eyes were cold as he walked toward King Qi without the slightest hint of fear. Bastard! King Qi's face was ashen from rage. The penal court was his private territory, and Wang Chang's actions were a naked provocation. Bastard! You're just a king with a different surname, and you don't have the slightest bit of imperial blood. Do you really think you can stand on equal footing with me? Since you've come to the penal court, don't even think about leaving. King Qi's face was gloomy as he waved his arm. In a flash, powerful energy erupted from the bodies of the experts he had brought with him, all of them locking onto Wang Chong. If you want to make a move against me, you'll have to look at your own capabilities first. Wang Chang's body exploded, a majestic wave of energy erupting from his body. Cold snorts could be heard as the top-class experts behind King Qi staggered backward. You're courting death. Seeing this, King Qi gnashed his teeth, unable to restrain his anger. Hong Long, he stamped his foot, and a green stream of essence Qi surged out from his body, soaring into the sky. In a flash, King Qi's energy swelled, and in the blink of an eye, he had broken into the Saint Martial realm and was now at the peak of the Saint Martial realm. Moreover, after breaking into the Great General realm, his energy continued to surge, instantly reaching the peak of the Great General realm and continuing to grow. At this moment, the strength King Qi had displayed was probably on par with Abu Muslim. Old Eagle and Zhang Ke were both stunned by this sight. Everyone knew that King Qi was arrogant and despotic, but the two of them had never known that King Qi's martial arts were so powerful. Just the cultivation he had displayed was enough to place him among the world's top-class experts. Bzz. The earth trembled, and the area several li around the penal court began to shake. Bang! King Qi stomped forward, leaving behind countless afterimages as he charged at Wang Chong like a furious dragon. Reckless thing, this king will tear you to pieces. King Qi's clenched teeth resounded through the penal court. Roar! An ancient roar, brimming with a thirst for blood and destruction, resounded in everyone's ears. A moment later, the image behind King Qi shifted, and a massive beast the size of a mountain began to emerge. It had green-black fur, savage fangs, and eyes brimming with a desire to destroy. All of these things were enough to make anyone feel intimidated. A primordial beast. According to legend, this was a powerful creature that had once lived in the Central Plains in the distant past. The imperial palace possessed countless secret martial arts manuals, and as a member of the royal family, King Qi had access to at least 80% of these manuals. This supreme technique was modeled after the essence of a primordial beast, and it was clearly an ancient and powerful technique that King Qi had cultivated. You overestimate yourself. Wang Chong only sneered as he watched King Qi charge at him with astonishing power. King Qi truly was one of the most powerful experts in the world. Not only did he have high status and great ambitions, but his strength and cultivation were also astonishing. Plus, although King Qi was powerful, he was still stuck at the level of pure strength. He had yet to touch upon the subtle realm. Rumble. A moment later, Wang Chong stomped down, and the earth rumbled as he shot into the sky like a cannonball. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, he slammed into the weakest point of King Qi's attack. Great Yin-Yang art. A resounding voice echoed through the penal court, rumbling like thunder. Countless people looked up, and in that moment, they all felt like they were hallucinating. It was like a sun and a moon had appeared in the sky. Rumble. After what seemed like an instant, but also like countless eons, there was an earth-shattering boom. Aya! A miserable shriek rang out as a figure shot down like a meteor, smashing into the ground in front of the penal court. The ground rapidly caved in, creating a giant crater. Countless pieces of rubble flew in every direction, and a cloud of dust soared into the sky. King Qi! Your Highness! Your Highness! The moment King Qi crashed into the ground, the entire penal court fell into chaos. Everyone paled in fright, and countless people swarmed toward the spot where King Qi had landed, their faces filled with panic. This round of competition had started quickly and ended even more quickly. In just one round, King Qi had been utterly defeated. In the air, Wang Chong flung his sleeves and floated down like a leaf. King Qi's strength had yet to reach the subtle realm. He probably didn't even know what the subtle realm was. Relying on brute force alone was impossible. Wang Chong landed on his feet, his entire body relaxed and carefree. Even his breathing was unruffled. It was clear that he had not used his full strength in this battle. "Let's go." Wang Chong's eyes chilled. Not even glancing at the spot where King Qi had landed, he led the eagle and Zhang Ke away. "Milord." The eagle and Zhang Ke followed behind Wang Chong, delighted to see this. King Qi had always opposed Wang Chong, and now that he had been defeated by Wang Chong, he had truly lost all face. They had finally been able to vent their resentment. "Wang Chong, this king will kill you." Wang Chong had barely taken 2 steps when he heard a furious roar accompanied by boundless killing intent. Rumble. Dust exploded as a figure shot out, blocking Wang Chong's path, his entire body exploding with killing intent. King Qi's body was covered in wounds, and his expression was wretched. However, his eyes were fixed on Wang Chong, the killing intent in his eyes so dense that it seemed tangible. "Everyone, kill this brat for me." King Qi's expression was ruthless. As a member of the imperial clan, King Qi had an extraordinary status and was born with incomparable respect. In his memories, everyone had been subservient and respectful to him. No one had ever dared to act like Wang Chong and the Wang clan, repeatedly ruining his plans and opposing him. No one had ever been like Wang Chong, provoking him on his doorstep, barging into his penal court, and even attacking him in front of everyone. This was an unprecedented humiliation. King Qi felt like his lungs were about to explode. "Wang Chong, I want you dead today." King Qi's eyes blazed with hatred. Following his order, all the experts of the penal court, as well as the top experts King Qi had brought, charged at Wang Chong like a storm. At this moment, a heaven-shaking roar rang out, followed by a cloud of dust. It was unknown just how many soldiers were charging in from outside the penal court. King Qi was stunned by this sudden development. He subconsciously turned his head, and across from him, Wang Chong narrowed his eyes in surprise. With a single glance, Wang Chong saw a familiar figure. "It's him." Even Wang Chong couldn't help but be taken aback by the sudden appearance of this figure. He had never imagined that Prime Minister Li Linfu, the head of all the civil and military officials, would actually lead the civil and military officials, as well as soldiers from the Ministry of Revenue, the Ministry of War, and the City Guard, to this place at this time. "King Qi, king of foreign lands, the two of you are noble imperial princes of the Tang dynasty, and yet you're fighting in the penal court in broad daylight? What propriety?" Li Linfu, dressed in the crimson robe of a first-rank official and riding a black horse, couldn't help but angrily rebuke them, a look of exasperation on his face. Behind him, the 20-some officials were also constantly looking at Wang Chong and King Qi, strange expressions on their faces. This was the first time that 2 imperial princes of the Tang dynasty had shed all pretense of cordiality and fought in the capital. "If I hadn't rushed over with my officials, who knows what kind of ruckus you would have made. Bastard things, get out of my way." These last words were directed at the experts of the penal court and the top-class experts King Qi had brought with him. Chapter 1294. Rumble. Following King Qi's order, the crowd scattered. Only Wang Chong narrowed his eyes, glancing pensively at Li Linfu and King Qi. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the heavens shook and the earth quaked. Another group of people came from afar. "The first prince has arrived." "Bizizi." Wang Chong's heart trembled as he looked in the direction of the voice. In the distance, 2 massive dragon banners had been raised. Behind the dragon banners were countless soldiers of the Imperial Guard, and the Golden Guard, who served as the Emperor's bodyguards. They were lined up in a grand procession as they made their way toward the penal court. Escorted by the Imperial Guard, a dignified and noble figure was making his way over. The first prince. Passing through the air, Wang Chong immediately spotted this familiar figure. The Holy Emperor lived in seclusion in the palace, with the first prince acting as regent. As long as the Holy Emperor did not appear, the first prince represented the emperor. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen the first prince outside of the imperial palace. In a single day, the tiny penal court had gathered the great prime minister, the first prince, and King Qi, three nobles of the court. In a flash, Wang Chong's heart sank as a strange feeling welled up in his heart. Putting aside King Qi, Prime Minister Li Linfu and the first prince had clearly come prepared. As expected, a moment later, Wang Chong heard the first prince's voice. "Wang Chong, you're quite bold to even dare injure imperial uncle. Accustomed to killing on the battlefield, do you think this place is also a battlefield?" With these words, the first prince ignored King Qi and fixed his gaze on Wang Chong. The hooves of a warhorse clattered as the great prince leapt out of the crowd and headed in the direction of the penal court. Paying respects to the first prince, everyone dismounted from their horses and bowed. Even Prime Minister Li Linfu bowed deeply on his horse. "Your Highness, you've come at just the right time. The king of foreign lands has forced his way into my penal court, taken a person from my penal court, and even injured a guard of my penal court. He has no regard for the laws of the country and is simply lawless. Your Highness, you must uphold justice for this king." Seeing the first prince, the Prince of Qi's expression immediately changed. With a flash, he rushed forward. At the same time, he pointed at Wang Chong, looking like a victim. In the blink of an eye, all of the officials, Prime Minister Li Linfu, and even the first prince looked at Wang Chong. The entire penal court was silent, and an invisible pressure weighed down on them. Bastard! These people deliberately banded together to deal with Wang Ye. When the Eagle and Zhang Ke saw this, they immediately realized that everything that was happening had been planned in advance to deal with Wang Chong. The first prince was the prince regent, Li Linfu was the prime minister, and Prince Qi was the Prince of Qi. With the three of them working together, the situation before them was likely to be difficult to resolve. Heh! A light breeze ruffled Wang Chong's robes. Now that things had come to this, Wang Chong actually calmed down and showed no fear. "The first prince and the prime minister have come at just the right time. This king has only just arrived, and the two of you have already arrived. Your Highness, in particular, is truly perceptive. When this king and King Qi stood together, Your Highness was able to immediately determine that this was my fault and that it had nothing to do with King Qi." Wang Chong said with a smile. His words caused all three of them to pale. The first prince was particularly stunned. He had originally believed that at this point, Wang Chong would at least admit defeat. He hadn't expected him to remain so unyielding. And it was clear that Wang Chong had seen through them. Impudent! In just a short moment, the first prince suddenly felt a wave of anger rise in his heart. It would have been fine if Wang Chong was just proud and aloof, unwilling to submit to him, but he had actually chosen to submit to the fifth prince. He simply didn't know how to appreciate favors, and the first prince could not tolerate him. "Wang Chong, do you mean that this prince has wrongly accused you?" "Wang Chong, it seems to me that after your victory at Karasin, you've become so arrogant that you don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. The first prince is His Highness's son and also the Prince Regent. When the Holy Emperor isn't present, he represents His Majesty. Is this how you speak to the first prince?" King Qi seized the opportunity to jeer. It was a fact that Wang Chong was currently in the penal court. No matter how Wang Chong denied it, he could not escape. I'm just speaking the facts. The penal court is not a forbidden ground of the imperial palace. As an imperial prince of the Tang dynasty, can this king not even approach a trifling place like the penal court? Wang Chong held his hands behind his back, not backing down in the face of the combined might of these three. "Moreover, King Qi, since you said to His Highness that I forced my way into the penal court and kidnapped someone, this king asks you, where is the person I kidnapped?" After saying those words, Wang Chong swept a sharp gaze across the trio. Meanwhile, the expressions of Li Linfu, the first prince, and King Qi suddenly changed. Based on their predictions, Wang Chong should have appeared outside the penal court with Zhao Qianqiu, but for some reason, Wang Chong was only accompanied by his two subordinates, not Zhao Qianqiu. This was completely different from what they had expected. In an instant, the first prince and Li Linfu simultaneously turned to look at the king of Qi. Damn it! King Qi's heart lurched, and he was momentarily speechless. The first prince and Li Linfu were waiting for his reply, but he had only just arrived at the penal court, so he had no idea what was going on. And if he couldn't find any evidence against Wang Chong, he couldn't punish him. Wang Chong clearly knew this, which was why he was so fearless. Foul brat, this king won't forgive you. King Qi gnashed his teeth, but he couldn't do anything. Bastard! Do you think you're being wronged by injuring my men? King Qi flew into a rage out of humiliation. This king only wanted to take a look at the penal court, but they obstructed me in every way possible, treating this king like a prisoner. Naturally, they can't blame this king. However, this king was in the wrong in this matter. Old Eagle, Zhang Ke, in a little while, the two of you bring some silver to the penal court. Treat it as a medical expense. Bastard! King Qi's nose went crooked from anger at Wang Chong's words. Wang Chong's words were unassailable, but there was nothing King Qi could do. Behind him, Li Linfu was extremely shrewd and unreadable, but the first prince found it hard to conceal the color in his eyes. Just forcing his way into the penal court was not enough to punish Wang Chong. Moreover, in order to support King Qi, the two of them had brought many ministers with them. If they couldn't punish Wang Chong, they would become the laughingstock of all the officials. This would greatly affect their image and reputation in the eyes of the officials. And King Qi, your face is swollen and your body is covered in wounds. Are you going to blame me and say that I was the one who beat you? Wang Chong turned his head to look at King Qi, a smirk on his face. Swish! King Qi's face immediately swelled to the size of a pig's liver. Wang Chong's words were clearly meant to publicly ridicule him. Even though King Qi was brimming with killing intent and wanted nothing more than to kill Wang Chong, he could not admit to this in front of all the officials, even though this could be used to deal with Wang Chong. Wang Chong, don't flatter yourself. With your cultivation, do you think you can deal with this king? King Qi hatefully said, his face ashen. The eagle and Zhang Ke laughed so hard their stomachs were about to roll over. Their lord's move was truly brilliant. Given King Qi's arrogance and conceit, he would never admit to it. Even if his teeth were knocked out, he would have to swallow it. As for Wang Chong, he was inwardly chuckling. That's good. I even thought that I had accidentally injured your highness. King Qi's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot, but there was nothing he could do. In the blink of an eye, rumbling sounds of hooves could be heard. From a different direction from the first prince, Li Linfu, another group of people was majestically making their way toward the penal court. The first prince, Li Linfu, and King Qi were stunned and turned their heads to look. All of their forces were gathered here, so this faction clearly did not belong to them. His Highness the King of Song has arrived. A loud shout came from the crowd. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a group of people crowding around a magnificent carriage, heading towards them. The carriage was richly decorated, and from the insignia on it, it was clearly the King of Song's carriage. Lord Zhangzhou Jianqiong has arrived. A moment later, another shout came from the crowd. The three paled. None of them had expected for the King of Song and Minister of War Zhangzhou Jianqiong to arrive at a time like this. On the other side, the eagle, Zhang Ke, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. The three of them had not come to the penal court unprepared. The penal court was King Qi's territory, so they had immediately notified the King of Song of their arrival. This had been a precaution, but looking back now, this decision had been the right one. With the King of Song and Zhangzhou Jianqiong present, the first prince and Li Linfu would at least have some reservations and wouldn't be able to act so recklessly against Wang Chong. Paying respects to your highness. A few moments later, the King of Song and Zhangzhou Jianqiong arrived. The two of them dismounted and rushed to the first prince's side. Imperial uncle, dispense with the formalities. The first prince waved his hand. Although he appeared calm on the surface, he was inwardly seething with hatred. With the appearance of these two, no matter how much the first prince wanted to deal with Wang Chong, he would have no choice but to give up. With all three regents gathered here, if a conflict were to break out, he would become a laughingstock. This king heard from my residence that your highness has brought all the civil and military officials to the penal court. Even the prime minister has come. Has something happened? The King of Song straightened his robes and walked over at a leisurely pace, bowing respectfully to the first prince. The first prince sat astride his divine steed, his expression relaxed, but his heart couldn't help but stiffen. "Hi, Your Highness," the King of Song has misunderstood. "Your Highness originally had an appointment with King Qi on matters of state, but because you heard that he was at the penal court, you just happened to come here." A mellow voice came from the side. Prime Minister Li Linfu's sleeves fluttered in the wind as he interjected. These words were flawless, and the first imperial prince was instantly cleared of any wrongdoing. "Right, Your Highness, didn't you want to convene the officials to discuss the matter of Fuzhou? Why don't we leave now, and King Qi can come back when he's free?" Chapter 1295. Li Linfu's reminder made the first prince come to a realization. Lord Prime Minister is right. Imperial uncle will take our leave first. You can come back later. The first prince tugged on the reins of his horse and immediately headed out. "Your Highness the King of Song, I'll be taking my leave with the first prince," Li Linfu said with a warm smile. With a flick of his sleeves, he brushed past the King of Song and continued on his way. King Song shivered as he stared at the backs of the two. He immediately turned his head in Wang Chang's direction and breathed a small sigh of relief. By the time he and Zhangqiu Jianxiong received the news, it was already too late. The first prince and Li Linfu had already arrived. Fortunately, nothing had happened to Wang Chong. "King Qi, your injuries seem to be quite severe. You should return to recuperate. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll be taking my leave first." Wang Chong shot a glance at King Qi before flinging his sleeves and walking toward the King of Song. Behind him, King Qi's body was trembling with rage, and his face was terrifyingly dark. The group boarded the King of Song's carriage and left the penal court. "How are you? Are you all right?" In the carriage, the King of Song, Wang Chong, and Zhangqiu Jianxiong were gathered together. In the end, it was still the King of Song who spoke first. "I'm fine." Wang Chong shook his head. "It won't be that easy for King Qi to deal with me. There's something fishy about this matter. It's one thing for King Qi to come after you barged into the penal court. After all, this is his territory, but even the first prince and the prime minister are here. This is no small matter. It's fortunate that you were quick-witted and didn't give them anything to use against you," the King of Song said. Indeed. The first prince and Li Linfu were clearly prepared for this trip. "When the King of Song and I arrived, we were worried for you." Zhangqiu Jianxiong also spoke up. Even Zhangqiu Jianxiong was taken aback by the appearance of the first prince and the prime minister in the penal court. Only then did he rush over with the King of Song. "This matter isn't that simple." Wang Chong calmed down and said calmly, "King Qi, the first prince, and the prime minister's affairs are one after another, and Zhao Qianqiu and the three great training camps' affairs are completely linked together. It can't be a coincidence that they arrived not long after I arrived at the penal court. From the looks of it, it was more like the result of someone meticulously plotting behind the scenes. King Qi's side did not have that much ability, and the prime minister's side was smooth and slick. He would not easily reveal his abilities. Although he had the ability, it was definitely not him. As for the first prince, it's even more impossible." With his back against the carriage, Wang Chang's eyes were filled with wisdom, as if he could see into the endless depths of time and space. "So, Wang Chong, you mean to say that it was the Confucian sect and that young man called Li Junxian?" The King of Song immediately understood Wang Chang's meaning and asked. "It can only be him." Wang Chong solemnly nodded. This was the only explanation. Although the other party was young, he was the strongest opponent Wang Chong had ever faced. Wave after wave of attacks, not giving him a chance to catch his breath. Buzz. The King of Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong glanced at each other, their hearts sinking. After bidding farewell to the King of Song and Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Wang Chong quickly got off the carriage and returned to his residence. Flap flap. Just as Wang Chong was returning to his residence, a messenger pigeon flew over the sky and landed in a restaurant in the western part of the city. The third floor of the restaurant was quiet and secluded. The third floor of West Wind Tower had the most elegant and fresh scenery, allowing one to admire the plum blossom forest planted by the river. Every day, many scholars would gather here to drink wine and admire the plum blossoms. But at this moment, West Wind Tower was quiet, with not a single customer in sight. There was only a sign hanging on the door that read, "Closed." At this moment, a white-clothed young man was sitting on the third floor, pouring wine and admiring the plum blossoms. The entire West Wind Tower was closed for the sake of entertaining this esteemed guest. Flap flap. The messenger pigeon landed on the table. A hand reached out from the side, took the letter, and sent the pigeon away. "Young master, the penal court has failed again. Wang Chong has returned safely." A voice rang out. A figure bowed and said to the side. He held the letter with both hands and respectfully handed it over. "Is that so?" Li Junxian grinned and took a sip of the fragrant tea in his cup, his expression indescribably carefree and natural. "As expected, I still can't stop him. That's not the only problem. We just received news that the King of Foreign Lands has already sent a memorial to the Imperial Court, formally giving Deflecting Blade Manor to the Kunwu training camp. But in the letter, he also appointed the manager of Deflecting Blade Manor. If my guess is correct, it should be someone from Deflecting Blade Manor. In addition, we just received news that the King of Foreign Lands has apparently written a letter to the Great Generals and the Bureau of Military Personnel, intending to use the name of the Protectorates and the Bureau of Military Personnel to establish a commander base outside of the 3 great training camps, an existence independent of the 3 great training camps. This time, we were only able to enter the 3 great training camps through our relationship with the First Prince and the Imperial household. If this commander base is established, it will belong completely to the militarists, and we won't be able to interfere at all. Moreover, the combined might of the Protector Generals of the border is no small matter. In the future, this commander base will not be one bit inferior to the 3 great training camps. If this happens, all our efforts will have been for nothing. The Confucian sect expert next to him sternly said, his voice brimming with worry. In the history of the Confucian sect, they had never encountered such a troublesome foe. He was clearly only a teenager, but his methods were unfathomable and extremely experienced, able to counter every move and completely nullify the Confucian sect's methods. The restaurant was quiet, and Li Juanxian's right hand, gripping the white porcelain teacup, paused for a moment before finally creasing his brow. The matter of the penal court was of no importance. It would be best if they could capture and imprison Wang Chong, but if they couldn't, it wouldn't have much of an effect. But if this commander base was established, everything would be completely different. The militarists and the Confucians were like fire and water. One advocated war, while the other advocated peace. At least for now, the militarists could no longer expand. "There's no need to worry. I have my own plans for this matter." But Li Juanxian's brow quickly relaxed and he calmed down. His limpid eyes seemed to contain boundless wisdom as he looked forward. Since the King of Foreign Lands is already on guard, there's no need to worry about him for now. In a little while, I will personally deal with him. Let me ask you, have you finished preparing for that matter? Young master, everything is going according to plan, without the slightest error. Everything is waiting for young master. As long as we can complete this step, our goal will assuredly advance, and young master's name will shake the world, becoming a meritorious subject of our Confucian sect. The man said, his voice brimming with admiration for Li Junxian. Countless people in the Confucian sect had wanted to realize the true harmonious world, but they had never been able to grasp the essentials, only to die of regret. Only in Li Juanxian's hands had they truly taken a large step forward, bringing them much closer to their goal. Get ready. In the next few days, I will be heading to the Western Turks to complete the last step. Li Junxian said. Yes, young master. The Confucian sect expert said. With a clang, the white porcelain teacup in Li Juanxian's hand landed on the table. Li Juanxian's eyes became a little dazed as he stared at the white porcelain teacup. He seemed to be recalling something, and a hint of sorrow appeared in his eyes, but it quickly vanished. Oh! A gust of wind blew past, and the 2 people in the West Wind Tower vanished. Flap flap. A carrier pigeon descended from the sky and landed in the Wang family residence. The capital appeared calm on the surface, but a silent contest was taking place in the shadows. Wang Chong stretched out his right hand and caught the messenger pigeon. Then he slowly removed the letter from its leg. Wang Chong glanced at it and gave a long sigh of relief. This letter had come from the northwest and bore the personal seal of Anxi Protector General Gao Xianji. Wang Chong's private message had proved effective. Upon learning that Su Hanshan and Li Sai had been captured, Gao Xianji had brought Cheng Qianli and all the top-class generals of the Anxi Protectorate Army to Qixi to demand their release. Li Sai and Su Hanshan had fought alongside the Anxi Protectorate Army at the Battle of Talas and were allies who had gone through life and death together. It could be said that if they hadn't risked their lives, the Anxi Protectorate Army would have already been wiped out. Moreover, the two of them had rendered great service in the war against Arabia. For them to be imprisoned over such a trifling matter was absurd to the extreme. This was the first time Gao Xianji had gotten so angry. Even without Wang Chong's order, he would not have stood by and watched. Not only that, when Gao Xianji had personally gone to Qixi to question them, Geshu Han had also sent a letter saying that he would be arriving in Qixi in a few days. The two great generals of the Tang dynasty had come with a fierce momentum, and their immense prestige and influence in the army had played a role. Under the pressure of the two great generals, the three Confucian commanders had been forced to promise that they would not harm the lives of Li Sai and Su Hanshan. In order to show fairness, they had agreed to allow Gao Xianji and Geshu Han to send their subordinates to participate and await the imperial court's decision. There's no need to detain Su Hanshan and Li Sai. This is clearly a delaying tactic. Just what are these people up to? After reading it, Wang Chong put away the letter and muttered to himself. Wang Chong was almost certain that while Li Junxian and the Confucian sect appeared to be dealing with Su Hanshan and Li Sai, they were actually dealing with him. No matter what Li Junxian was planning, Wang Chong had no fear. "Milord!" At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard. Old Eagle, travel-worn, walked in from outside. Chapter 1296. What? Wang Chong's body shook in surprise. Lu Ting had once said that even if Wen Choshu was still alive, he was in his 90s and had an eccentric personality. In other words, even Lu Ting believed that there was a high chance that he was no longer alive. Being able to find Wen Choshu so quickly was definitely unexpected. What did the Li clan of Jing Prefecture say? Wang Chong quickly calmed down and asked. Being able to receive news of Wen Choshu was truly exciting, but before confirming his identity, he could not celebrate too early. The Li clan of Jing Prefecture replied that the person they found was very similar to the person scholar Lu Ting spoke of. They were both in their 90s, had an eccentric personality, liked to collect ancient books, and had a bean-sized mole on his left brow. The Li clan of Jing Prefecture also investigated. That person claimed to be surnamed Wen and also moved there more than 20 years ago. Although he called himself Wen Guxin, the villagers saw a seal on his body. It was Wen Choshu. In addition, his collection of books was astonishing. After he arrived, he bought several large courtyards and even hired people to build 3 more, all of which were filled with books. When the Li clan went to buy medicinal ingredients, they went to this old gentleman's house to ask for water and saw his astonishing collection of books. Only then did they notice this person. The eagle bowed. When Choshu, Wang Chong had a pensive look. People who collected ancient books all had a habit. They cherished the ancient books they collected and would not randomly scribble on them. Instead, they would place a bookmark inside the book and stamp the collector's name on it. If these collectors died and the book fell into the hands of the next collector, they would continue to stamp their name on it. In this way, the previous collectors of the ancient book could be seen through the label and stamp, and there would be traces to follow. This was a custom and habit of ancient book collectors. To have Wen Choshu's seal on his waist meant that there was a 60% chance that this person was the person he was looking for. The eagle, take scholar Lu Ting over and personally verify Wen Choshu's identity. In addition, send 4 experts to guard him. At the same time, select a few scholars from the great clans to assist Lu Ting. I want to know as soon as possible what that bird seal script means, and the meaning of that black seal. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. At that moment, his eyes were incomparably bright. The surprise had come too suddenly. The Confucian sect was finally making a move. The eagle quickly led Lu Tingji and a dozen other experts on their way. For the sake of safety, the king of Song had sent over another 20 experts, all of whom were top-notch experts that had been carefully selected. The conflict between the militarists and the Confucians no longer only affected the imperial court, but also the entire world. The king of Song knew this better than anyone else. Once something happened to the militarists, more than 10 million people of the Tang dynasty would be trapped. This was also the reason why the king of Song gave his full support. The capital gradually entered a period of peace. After Wang Chong had neutralized the attacks of Qixi and the 3 great training camps, Li Junxian and the Confucian sect seemed to have slowed down their attacks and made no further moves. Wang Chong was also waiting for further news from Lu Tingji and the king of Song. The two sides had entered a temporary period of peace. But both Wang Chong and Li Junxian understood that the other side was preparing to launch a new wave of attacks at any moment. At the same time, something else was taking place in the capital that did not alarm too many people. With the Bureau of Military Personnel taking the lead and Zhangqiu Jianxiong presiding over the joint support of King of Foreign Lands Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, Geshu Han, Zhang Shougue, Xinyu Zhongtong, and the other protector generals and great generals, a new commander base was formally established in the northwestern suburbs of the capital. The general base was massive, several dozen mu in size. The Bureau of Military Personnel would pay a portion of the construction costs. Wang Chong would pay half, and the great clans of the capital would pay the rest. To put it nicely, it was a sponsorship. This was yet another new method. In this way, the problem of the Bureau of Revenue allocating funds could be avoided, allowing the commander base to be built as quickly as possible. In addition, the main architect of this commander base was none other than the master architect of Wushang's City of Steel and the steel buildings of the Northwest Battlefield, Zhang Shouji, whose name had spread throughout the world. It would take at least several more months for the commander base to be completed. When the time came, many students of the 3 great training camps and some officers of the military would be able to enter and study. Unlike the 3 great training camps, the commander base would teach a great deal of military strategy and command techniques. All the instructors were top-class officers from the 5 protectorates, each of them possessing rich experience in battle. This was one of the characteristics that distinguished the commander base from the 3 great training camps. On the other hand, Wang Chong imparted a higher level of combat ability to them. Wang Chong's reputation as the new war god and his world-renowned ability to command soldiers made this commander base even more attractive. At the same time, Wang Chong was working hard to find Li Junxian, but Li Junxian seemed to have evaporated into thin air. But even so, the Confucian school's offensive did not stop. More and more Confucian lectures were appearing in the capital, preaching benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom, promoting the great harmony of the world, and the influence of the Confucian school continued to grow. Wang Chong could sense that the hearts of the people were slowly changing, but the Confucian school's choice was impeccable. Not even Wang Chong, as the king of foreign lands, could stop the Confucian school from carrying out these lectures. But just because he could not stop them did not mean that Wang Chong had no way of dealing with them. Su Kui, Qing Sanyuan, I have something for you to do. Several days later, Wang Chong summoned Su Kui and the others to his study. I want you to immediately contact the great clans of the capital and have them complete this task as quickly as possible. In addition, I will initially provide 30 million taels of gold, and I will provide even more to help you complete this task. Milord! Everyone in the room looked in shock at Wang Chong with their mouths agape. 30 million! And it was in gold, and it would continue to increase. This was a figure that completely surpassed their imaginations. After all, the imperial court had only given Wang Chong 10 million taels of gold for the Battle of Talas. This 10 million taels of gold had been enough to support the Tang dynasty in its war against Arabia, laying the foundation for its final victory. But now, Wang Chong had given them 30 million taels of gold, and this was only a portion of it. This was a fortune that many people would never be able to use in their entire lives. They found it very difficult to imagine just what sort of task would require so much gold. Everything is written in the letter. Go. Yes, milord. Su Kui took the letter from the table and quickly left. A few days later, a piece of news from the Jing prefecture reached the capital. A body-strengthening school led by the Jing prefecture's Li clan had been established in the Jing prefecture. All kinds of martial arts were taught there, and not only was it free of charge, it even provided free breakfast and dinner. At the start, there was only one person, but it quickly grew to 7 or 8, and then more than 10. At the start, it was only in the Jing prefecture, but these martial arts schools began to sprout like bamboo shoots after the rain, opening from the Jing prefecture to the neighboring prefectures and then spreading out to other places. In a single week, the number of these martial arts schools had increased to several hundred, and they were opening all over the world. Several weeks later, there were several thousand of these body-strengthening schools, and they were still increasing at an astonishing rate. These body-strengthening schools had the same style, all of them ancient and elegant, and they had experienced instructors instructing them. At the start, the surrounding people had been skeptical, but when they realized that the body-strengthening schools were providing free porridge, they began to pour in. Not only that, some people quickly realized that the body-strengthening schools had a rule. Anyone who practiced martial arts in the schools for a week would receive 10 copper coins. If one practiced martial arts in the schools for a month, one would receive a piece of silver. The longer one practiced, the more silver one would receive, and after half a year, one would receive a silver ingot. Such a thing had never happened in the Central Plains before. Moreover, the martial arts schools were surrounded by many people, and even though the requirements for admission were strict, an astonishing number of students were eventually accepted. Based on the expenses of the people, horses, and instructors, the daily expenses were enormous. No ordinary clan could afford this. But people quickly realized that the martial arts schools seemed to have an endless supply of silver. No matter how much money was spent, it never stopped. It was like the owner of these body-strengthening schools possessed an inexhaustible amount of wealth. And when the owner of these body-strengthening schools was revealed, the entire world was thrown into an uproar. The king of foreign lands, the owner of these thousands of body-strengthening schools, was none other than the illustrious and influential war god of the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong. In a flash, the world was thrown into an uproar. Because of Wang Chong's reputation, countless people surged into these body-strengthening schools to learn martial arts and strengthen their bodies. Countless local tycoons contacted Wang Chong, hoping that his body-strengthening schools would be opened in their areas. Some local tycoons and clans even offered to pay for a portion of the daily expenses of these body-strengthening schools. In a short time, Wang Chong's reputation caused these body-strengthening schools to sweep through the world. For a time, it was a trend to strengthen one's body and practice martial arts. The number of body-strengthening schools rapidly swelled to tens of thousands, covering almost the entire world. Flap flap. One carrier pigeon after another flew toward the capital. In the northwest corner of the capital, in a tea house, a black-robed elder who appeared to be an erudite Confucian scholar extended a hand and caught the carrier pigeon. With just a glance, his complexion instantly turned ashen. Bastard! The Confucians had opened schools in the capital to promote benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom, while Wang Chong had opened martial arts schools throughout the 9 provinces to teach martial arts. He was clearly opposing the Confucians. I'd like to see how long you can remain so smug. With a wave of his sleeve, the black-robed elder vanished from the tea house. Chapter 1298. The people of the Confucian sect were far from the only ones to receive the news. At the same time, in the Wang family residence, Wang Chong was dressed in plain clothes, his long black hair held in place by a hairpin. As he stood in front of his desk, he exuded both the elegance of the scholarly path and the dignity and bearing of the martial path. On the table in front of him were reports from the various provinces and commanderies. Not bad. In just a few short moments, we've already broken through 50,000. A smile crept onto Wang Chong's lips as he read the message. This number was far greater than he had imagined. The daily expenditure was so astonishing that even the ancient clans of the capital with 200 or 300 years of history and astonishing wealth could not afford it. In normal circumstances, no single person or faction could accomplish this. But in the Battle of Khorasan, Wang Chong had obtained 9 billion taels of gold from Mutasim III. 1 billion had been given to the imperial court, 100 million had been used to buy the Hyderabad mountain range, and 200 million had been used to compensate the deceased soldiers and to repay the tribes of the western regions and Greater and Lesser Balar that had participated in the battle. At the same time, Wang Chong, Go Xianji, and the others still had around 600 million gold taels in their hands. It was with this immense wealth that Wang Chong was able to support the construction of the massive number of body tempering halls across the country. This step was not just to deal with Li Junxian and the Confucian sect. In truth, long ago when they had first obtained this sum of gold, Wang Chong and Gao Xianji had discussed in Khorasan how they would use this sum of money to enrich the country and strengthen the people. This included building body-strengthening schools throughout the empire, teaching martial arts, and raising the martial strength of the people of the Tang dynasty. At the time, they had even received the fervent praise of Gao Xianji. But now was the right time, and they could use this opportunity to fully carry out the body-strengthening school plan. In his last life, in the battle against the otherworldly invaders, Wang Chong had always been faced with a lack of soldiers. Although the Central Plains had tens of millions of people, very few people were suited for the battlefield and could join the army. This was also the reason why Wang Chong came up with the body-strengthening club plan. 600 million taels of gold. Although it's impossible to sustain this for a long time, it should be able to last for at least 10 years. It should be enough to last until the calamity arrives. As long as the body-strengthening club plan continues, we will be able to cultivate a large number of qualified warriors for the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong put down the letter and thought to himself, this was the real plan to make every citizen a soldier. However, apart from Wang Chong, not many people knew about it. Voila! Just as he was thinking about this, the sound of wings breaking through the air could be heard. In the blink of an eye, an extremely sharp golden eagle flew over the window and landed in front of Wang Chong's table. Seeing this special eagle, Wang Chong's eyes twitched. This was the signal that Wang Chong and the eagle had agreed upon. There was finally news from Lu Tingji. 2 days later, a letter accompanied by a thick carriage of documents was transported from the distant Jing prefecture to the capital and into the Wang family residence. When Chou Shu's identity had been confirmed, and Lu Tingji had gained far more than he had imagined. Not only had Lu Tingji fulfilled his long-cherished wish of many years and met Wen Chou Shu in person, he had also unexpectedly obtained a large amount of information on bird seal script from this #1 bibliophile of the Central Plains. Lu Tingji had discarded the purely academic materials and sent the information that he found useful from the Jing prefecture to the capital. He had also marked all of them so that Wang Chong could read them. "Milord, Scholar Lu has said that he has placed the most important book on top. You only need to read the first book to understand the meaning of that black mark," Su Shixian sternly said. Wang Chong said nothing more. He picked up the black ancient book at the very top of the box and opened it. At first glance, Wang Chong saw a bookmark stamped with a red square seal. Wen Chou Shu. Wang Chong recognized the contents at a glance. As he flipped to the first page, bird seal script characters leapt into view. With a glance, Wang Chong knew that Lu Tingji was correct. There truly was a character in the center of that black mark, and it was the bird seal script that Lu Tingji had spoken of. The style of the two was exactly the same. Wang Chong said nothing and continued to flip to the next page. This was an ancient book that systematically discussed bird seal script. It had come from a great Confucian of the Wei and Jin era around 500 or 600 years ago. He seemed to be particularly interested in bird seal script and had gathered a great deal of information to produce this book. Besides the various bird seal script characters, it also discussed the origins of the various characters and the related legends. After reading around 20 to 30 pages, Wang Chong flipped to the label that Lu Tingji had left in the book. A unique bird seal script immediately leapt into view. The moment he saw this character, Wang Chong's pupils constricted as if they had been pricked by a needle. The characters in this ancient book that Lu Tingji had sent were almost identical to the characters in the center of the black mark of the Confucian sect. Tong! As Wang Chong looked at the explanation left behind by the Great Confucian of the Wei and Jin era, his eyebrows jumped. In that instant he faintly thought of something. In his last life, he had seen this black mark twice, but Wang Chong had never imagined that it would contain a character. As he continued to read, he found that the book also recorded the origin of this character. During the spring and autumn and warring states periods, the various countries were at war and the people of the divine continent were plunged into misery and suffering. Among them, there was a sage who traveled everywhere, seeking audience with the monarchs of the various countries in hopes of persuading them to abandon their selfish desires. However, from the age of 30 to the age of 70, that sage spent 40 years to no avail. In his later years, not only did the wars of the divine continent not stop, they only grew more and more intense. When his last disciple, who had once accompanied him in persuading the various monarchs, died in the chaos of war, the last sage of the spring and autumn era could no longer hold back his grief and indignation. He spat out a mouthful of essence blood and dipped his finger in it. Before the eyes of his young followers, he created a new bird seal script, the character for Tong. This word contained all of the spring and autumn saints' ambitions and unwillingness. After writing this character, the last sage of the spring and autumn era expressed his unwillingness and regret to his young followers before passing away. It was rumored that after the sage's death, one of his young followers took the character he had written and fled deep into the mountains. Using this character as a blueprint, he founded a sect called the Confucian sect. The majority of people believed this legend to be a baseless rumor. Even in the Wei and Jin era, many people treated it as unofficial history. But the Great Confucian of the Wei and Jin era believed that while the first half of the legend could not be investigated, the second half of the Confucian sect was not necessarily groundless fabrication. This was because the Great Confucian of the Wei and Jin era had mentioned that in the Qin and Han eras, there had been bits and pieces of the Confucian sect. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was attentive. Even the author of this ancient text had only collected information on bird seal script and had not taken it too seriously. But when Wang Chong finished reading this description, his heart began to tremble. How could this be? In Drunken Moon Pavilion, Wang Chong had heard Li Junxian talk about the destruction of the 100 sages, but he had never imagined that the Confucian sect really was connected to the spring and autumn and warring states periods. If this ancient text was correct, the Confucian sect behind Li Junxian had a history of more than 1,000 years. This had completely surpassed Wang Chong's imagination. A sect that could last for more than 1,000 years, survive through war, famine, and the change of dynasties, and survive until the Tang dynasty. If he had not seen Li Junxian and the members of the Confucian sect with his own eyes and seen the black insignia on their hands, Wang Chong would have never dared to believe that all this was true. Wang Chong continued to flip through the pages, but this ancient text did not have many records on the Confucian sect. After switching to another book, Wang Chong continued to flip through the pages. The majority of the contents were repetitive, all of them explanations of bird seal script. But when he flipped to the third book, Wang Chong once more saw that familiar insignia and the legend of the Confucian sect. This was the work of a great Confucian of the early northern Zhou. According to his records, a Confucian sect had once appeared in the early northern Zhou, and this great Confucian of the Confucian sect had loudly advocated for the northern Zhou and the other countries of that time to put aside the grudges and hatred between them, put an end to war, abandon selfishness, and return peace to the people of the world. This person had only appeared for a very short time before vanishing. As for the matters regarding the Confucian sect, they had only appeared for a brief moment. The people's understanding of them was limited to that great Confucian and his proposals. There was nothing else. In that era, the marks they had left behind were not very deep. Even the great Confucian of the northern Zhou who had written these records had only skimmed over them, not delving too deeply into them. Wang Chong put down the 3 books and continued to read. This time, the insignia had appeared in the era after the northern Zhou, during the reign of Emperor Wen of the Great Sui. The more Wang Chong read, the more shocked he became. The spring and autumn period, the warring states period, the Wei Jin period, the northern Zhou period, the early Sui, the era of the Holy Emperor. If the records were true, this faction called the Confucian sect had appeared in every period of history. How could such a faction exist in the Central Plains? Wang Chong muttered to himself as he put down the books. If it weren't for a great scholar like Lu Tingji, very few people would have been able to glean any clues from these books. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood why Lu Tingji had sent these books to him instead of personally explaining it to him. There were some things that could not be explained clearly with words. Seeing was believing. Only by seeing with one's own eyes could one understand the veracity of these legends. Moreover, this truth was simply too shocking. Wang Chong had never imagined that the experts he had encountered in his last life during the end of days would have such a background. Su Shixian, have the King of Song's men arrived? Wang Chong asked. Chapter 1299. Milord, the King of Song's men will be arriving soon. Su Shixian bowed. Reporting. While the two of them were talking, a guard of the Wang clan suddenly rushed into the room. Milord, the captain of the King of Song Residence's guard, Luo Zhen, requests an audience. Let him in. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as he waved his hand. A few moments later, a black-bearded man more than 9 meters tall, armed with armor and wielding a spear, swiftly strode into the room. Your Highness, the King of Song has a letter for me to personally deliver to your Highness. Luo Zhen bowed and presented the letter to Wang Chong with both hands. The King of Song said that this matter is extremely important, so he had me personally deliver it. Wang Chong took the letter and slid his finger across it, taking out the letter. With just a glance, Wang Chong's expression flickered. This letter was covered in a ghastly red stain. At that moment, Wang Chong vaguely thought of something, and his heart trembled. Opening the letter, Wang Chong continued to read. This letter was a routine report from the spy that the King of Song had placed at King Qi's side, reporting what he had seen of King Qi's daily life. Although King Qi had always been careful and left no trace, his efforts had paid off. In the end, he had managed to eavesdrop on the information he wanted. By chance, he had managed to eavesdrop on a conversation between King Qi and one of his close advisors and advisors. The conversation had inadvertently brought up the topic of the Confucian sect. The advisor had mentioned many times that King Qi was helping the Confucian sect, that he was in a subordinate position, and that the officials of the court were likely to look down on him. But King Qi did not care. Moreover, the advisor had mentioned that the Confucian sect had an enormous background and terrifying strength. It had many powerful opponents, even peak Saint martial experts and great generals. King Qi saw that the other party was very strong and could help deal with the Wang clan and the King of Song, so he decided to cooperate with him. Moreover, Prince Qi had mentioned in his conversation with his advisors that the Confucian sect was actively making preparations. In the near future, they would make a major move in the imperial court. If they succeeded, they would completely alter the structure of the court. Buzz. Seeing this, Wang Chong's heart shook fiercely. The structure of the imperial court had undergone a massive transformation even before he had withdrawn from Khorasan. Many officials in the King of Song's faction, whether they were civil officials or military generals, either defected or were transferred out of the capital to various prefectures of the Tang dynasty. Many unfamiliar faces were transferred to the royal court. From this point of view, the structure of the imperial court had undergone a great change. Wang Chong found it hard to imagine. If this wasn't a huge change, then what was? What was a complete change in the structure of the imperial court? In a flash, Wang Chong felt an intense sense of danger. Wang Chong continued to read, but the letter came to an abrupt end at this point. Wang Chong stood in a daze, his mind in turmoil for a long time. What happened to the scout sent by the King of Song? After a long while, Wang Chong suddenly said, "His whereabouts are unknown. The King of Song has already sent people to search for him," Luo Zhen said. Luo Zhen said. A hint of sadness flashed through Wang Chong's eyes. When he saw that mouthful of blood on the letter, he had already guessed at what had happened. Although King Qi was conceited, he was also paranoid, and he had many people at his side to assist him. The spy sent by the King of Song had probably already been discovered. Thank the King of Song for me. Su Shixian, arrange for someone to send some money to his family, and then find some people to search for him. See if we can find him and rescue him. Wang Chong said. Although the chances were slim, as long as there was even a chance, they should not give up. This subordinate understands. Su Shixian and Luo Zhen quickly left. As for Wang Chong, he stood in his study, lost in thought. He had originally believed that, with the assistance of the King of Song and his participation in the regency, there wouldn't be too many problems. At the very least, he would be able to veto any unreasonable proposals. But now, it seemed that things would not be so simple. At the very least, since King Qi and the Confucian sect dared to act in such a way, daring to completely alter the structure of the imperial court, they were certain that they would succeed. It seems that I can no longer remain uninvolved in the affairs of the imperial court. At the very least, I have to do my best to participate in the early stages. This way, the King of Song will have someone to look after in the imperial court. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. With this thought in mind, Wang Chong quickly left the study. Days passed. 3 days later, Wang Chong bathed and changed into a crimson imperial robe. Under the attentions of his entourage, he walked out of the Wang family residence. Outside the residence, a magnificent carriage inlaid with gold was waiting. The sky was dark, the first rays of dawn spitting out from the east. At almost the same moment, a messenger pigeon flew through the air and landed in Wang Chong's hand. Wang Chong only glanced at it before crushing the letter into a ball. Is everything prepared? Wang Chong calmly asked. Your Highness, everything has been arranged. The King of Song's carriage is waiting at the palace gate. Once Your Highness arrives, we will head to the imperial court together. Su Shixian bowed. Wang Chong grunted and nodded. He raised the curtain and stepped into the carriage. Hiya! With a shout, the carriage rolled forward and immediately headed for the palace gate. Around an hour later, Wang Chong's carriage finally arrived at the gate of the imperial city. There, an ornately carved carriage was waiting. The image of an imperial dragon on the carriage clearly indicated the identity of its occupant. Although all the kings of the Tang dynasty used the image of an imperial dragon, each of them had a different design. Only the King of Song had this kind of golden embroidery. Milord. The moment Wang Chong's carriage appeared, a slightly bowed figure quickly stepped forward. It was none other than Luo Zhen, whom Wang Chong had met once before. The King of Song is already waiting for Your Highness. Wang Chong nodded and quickly entered the King of Song's carriage. Hiya. The moment Wang Chong entered, the carriage wheels began to move slowly toward Taihe Palace. Only the King of Song, who had inherited a golden medallion from the previous King of Song, could ride his carriage to any place other than Taihe Palace and the imperial harem. This was something that only the King of Song could enjoy. Have you read the information I gave you? The King of Song suddenly asked, his back leaning against the carriage, his expression cold. I have. Wang Chong nodded and sat down across from the King of Song. This time, their target is He Qingrong. No matter what, we can't let them succeed. He Qingrong was a second-rank official of the imperial court and an important advisor at the King of Song's side. He had the authority to participate in politics in the imperial court. The King of Song's influence in the imperial court had already been weakened by the Confucians, but after a brief period of silence, the Confucians had once more set their sights on the left and right arms of the King of Song. He Qingrong has been in the imperial court for many years. This time, they're using the excuse of preventing floods and irrigation in Jiangnan to transfer him out of the capital. Jiangnan is prone to floods, and every year during the rainy season, the floods become a disaster. The imperial court has always had the intention to control them, so not too long ago, a resolution was finally passed to invest 3 million taels of gold in the large-scale construction of canals and irrigation projects to divert the tributaries of the Jingchu River. At the time, I felt that this was a good thing for the country and the people, so I did not stop them. However, I didn't expect that they had ulterior motives. In the end, they set their sights on Bright Minister He Qingrong. He Qingrong was originally from Jiangnan, so they hoped to use this opportunity to transfer He Qingrong out of the capital. Today's court session was held to discuss this matter. The king of Song sternly said, a look of reminiscence in his eyes. From the construction of canals in Jiangnan to the transfer of He Qingrong out of the capital, these people had been closely interlocking and pressing forward step by step. Not even the king of Song had expected these people to be so thoughtful and farsighted. Any official should be able to take on the task of constructing canals and irrigation projects in Jiangnan. Even if He Qingrong was originally from Jiangnan, there's no need to send him out of the capital to manage the project. Wang Chong sat upright and still, a stern expression on his face. In normal circumstances, there's naturally no need, so they sent some people from He Qingrong's hometown to request that He Qingrong be returned to his hometown and manage the irrigation project. They even helped him prepare the inscriptions on the stele. The He clan has always been a major clan of Jiangnan, and many people have petitioned. King Qi is currently using this matter to get He Qingrong to leave. Although this matter is different from being demoted, and he can still be transferred back to the capital, the irrigation project will take a very long time, at least 2 to 3 years. By then, the imperial court will have already decided, and it will be too late. The king of Song said with a solemn expression. The intrigue, deceit, and schemes in the court were far more complicated than one could imagine. Even the king of Song, who had been in the court for decades, could not be sure that he would not fall into someone else's trap. Even if it's a request from a fellow villager, He Qingrong can still reject it. The country is the most important, and the feelings of one's fellow countrymen cannot be placed above the country. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. It's not that simple. If that's the case, He Qingrong can indeed refuse. But with the request from the townsfolk and He Qingrong's mother being seriously ill, everything is different. The king of Song said with a hint of worry between his brows. Buzz. Wang Chong's entire body trembled at these words. He truly had not expected this at all. The Central Plains was different from the barbarians. Filial piety was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, so of all virtues, filial piety came first. If the townsfolk wished, He Qingrong could choose not to return, but if he did not return from his mother's illness, he would be considered unfilial. In every dynasty, he would inevitably be attacked, and when the time came, He Qingrong might not even be able to hold an official position. He Qingrong is a second-rank official, a loyal official of the court. Why is his mother in Jiangnan when he's an official? Wang Chong asked. He Qingrong once tried to have his mother move to the capital, but the old woman missed her hometown and was unwilling to leave Jiangnan. Moreover, all her relatives were there, so He Qingrong couldn't do anything. The king of Song couldn't help but sigh. There was a moment of silence in the carriage. Neither of them said a word. You've investigated Jiangnan? Why is the timing so coincidental? Jiangnan is undergoing irrigation works, and He Qingrong's mother happens to be seriously ill? A few moments later, Wang Chong opened his eyes and said. He still felt that there was something fishy about this matter. The fact that He Qingrong's mother was seriously ill was far too coincidental. Wang Chong instinctively sensed that this matter was man-made. Chapter 1300. The king of Song raised his head and glanced at Wang Chong, a ripple of emotion in his eyes. You have a good feeling. We sent people to Jiangnan to investigate, and they found that He Qingrong's mother wasn't seriously ill. She just caught a cold, and the villagers bewitched her, coupled with her longing for her son, resulted in her being seriously ill. At this point, Wang Chong finally frowned. This matter was far more complicated than he had imagined. He Qingrong's mother missed her son, so He Qingrong was completely capable of taking a leave of absence to visit his family, whether it was for 2 months or longer. It was clear that someone with ulterior motives had used this matter. Gulp. As they were speaking, the carriage came to a stop. It had finally arrived at the gate of Supreme Harmony, and up ahead was the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Wang Chong and the king of Song returned, their expressions solemn as they disembarked from the carriage. Let's go in first. When the time comes, we'll act according to the circumstances. No matter what, we have to get the other officials to take charge of the irrigation works. At the same time, we have He Qingrong go back to visit his family. The king of Song said. Wang Chong grunted and nodded. The King of Song had said exactly what he had been thinking, and the two of them were of the same mind. The Hall of Supreme Harmony soared into the clouds, and the pair walked up a long stairway made of white jade into the Hall of Supreme Harmony. All the officials had gathered in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Buzz! When Wang Chong and the King of Song walked into the hall together, the entire hall buzzed with chatter, countless gazes focusing on the red-robed Wang Chong. It's him! Something's probably going to happen today. All eyes were filled with apprehension as they stared at the chilling Wang Chong. Although Wang Chong had been a general, the disbandment of the prefectural armies and Zhang Chaoshu had shown everyone just how formidable he was. Although it had been a long time since he had attended court, Wang Chong still wielded enormous influence in the imperial court. King of foreign lands. When they saw Wang Chong, Beacon General Jiang Yunrang and the other generals all looked over with joy. Yes. Wang Chong nodded and greeted everyone. He quickly shifted his gaze and looked in another direction. At first glance, Wang Chong quickly noticed the Prince of Qi by the coiling dragon pillar. The Prince of Qi had his arms crossed. When Wang Chong looked over, the Prince of Qi also looked over. In that instant, the corners of King Qi's mouth curled up as he sneered, a faint trace of complacency appearing in his eyes. At that moment, a hint of worry flitted across Wang Chong's brow. However, before Wang Chong could make things difficult for him, Prince Qi had already turned his head. Facing the ceiling of the hall, he closed his eyes, appearing indifferent and disinclined to pay any attention to Wang Chong. Wang Chong ignored him and turned his gaze elsewhere. The civil and military officials in the hall had not changed. Now that the King of Song had obtained the power to assist the government, he had already overruled many of the decisions made against the generals and civil officials under him. But perhaps it was just his imagination, but when he looked at those unfamiliar officials that the Confucian sect had placed in the imperial court, although they were still expressionless, Wang Chong sensed that they were a little different from before. As his gaze continued to move, Wang Chong once more saw a familiar figure seated on a large sandalwood chair in the upper right corner of the hall. Ever since Wang Chong had rebuked him in the court debate and almost caused him to faint from anger, the Grand Preceptor had not appeared in court for a very long time. But now, the Grand Preceptor once more appeared in court. He sat on the large wooden armchair, his back to Wang Chong. He was motionless, his eyes closed as if he was taking a nap. It was clear that he had no intention of paying any attention to Wang Chong. Buzz! The sight of the Grand Preceptor's back caused Wang Chong's brow to rise. The Grand Preceptor cared a great deal about his face, and after being rebuked by Wang Chong in court, the Grand Preceptor had lost all his face. Thus, he had not appeared in court for a very long time. Unless there was a special matter, this sort of person would never appear and become an official of the same court as Wang Chong. Is it because of He Qingrong? Wang Chong quietly said to himself. But deep inside, Wang Chong had a feeling that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. Suppressing the unease in his heart, Wang Chong's gaze swept over Bright Minister He Qingrong and Prime Minister Li Linfu, and he immediately heard a shrill voice at his ear. The first prince has arrived. Pa, with the crack of the whip, all the civil and military officials immediately fell silent. Under the gazes of the crowd, the eldest imperial prince Li Ying strode out from the side of the great hall, escorted by several silk-robed eunuchs and golden guards. Paying respects to the first prince. Upon seeing the first prince, everyone bowed and paid their respects. The first prince lifted his robes and sat down on the throne that represented the sacred emperor at the top of the hall. His gaze was disdainful and his aura was vigorous. Perhaps it was because he had sat on the dragon throne and was managing the court in the sage emperor's place, but the first prince was gradually beginning to exude the aura of an emperor that only a person of the sage emperor could have. His gaze swept over the court like lightning, pausing on Wang Chong for a moment before quickly withdrawing. Ministers, if you have something to report, make a memorial. If not, dismiss. A shrill voice resounded through the hall. At the first prince's side, replacing eunuch Gao Lisher's seat, was a white-haired, white-bearded eunuch. His body was thin, and his 5 fingers were like hooks. Although he gave off no aura, his eyes exuded a sharp light, exuding an unfathomable aura. He was clearly a top-class expert of the imperial palace. "Your Highness, this subject has a memorial." In the main hall, an official stepped forward and began the daily agenda. The Holy Emperor had retired into the depths of the palace, leaving the first prince to manage the affairs of the state. Other than the change in person, there was not much difference. The affairs of the court were complicated and involved the various provinces and counties. This was not Wang Chong's forte, so after listening for a while, Wang Chong quickly closed his eyes and waited. The Grand Preceptor, King Qi, and Li Linfu were all present in today's court session. Wang Chong was well aware that the other court discussions were just appetizers. The crux of the matter was the bright minister, He Qingrong. This court session would decide whether he would stay or not. The court discussions were resolved one after another, and after some time, a voice suddenly resounded through the hall. "Your Highness, this subject has a memorial. The Jiangnan floods have been inexorably dealt with. Not long ago, a resolution was passed to invest 3 million taels of gold in digging new canals and irrigation works. This lowly subject proposes that the imperial court consider the petition of the people and send the bright minister to Jiangnan to preside over the situation." Following this voice, a figure stepped out from the ranks of the court and spoke to the first prince in a loud voice. Buzz. Wang Chong had been watching from the sidelines with his eyes closed, but when he heard this voice, he opened his eyes. "Zhou Taiqin." A cold light flashed through Wang Chong's eyes. He immediately recognized this person as Grand Chamberlain Zhou Taiqin, who had tried his best to dissuade the imperial court from sending troops at the Battle of Talas. "He's here." Wang Chong was startled. After waiting for so long, the court session was finally about to begin. "Your Highness, this subject agrees. Lord, he is a native of Jiangnan and is extremely familiar with the geography there. Sending Lord, he will definitely be able to adapt to the local conditions and get twice the result with half the effort. This will also greatly shorten the construction period and avoid many unnecessary problems." Immediately after Zhou Taiqin, another old official stepped forward and said, "Correct. Lord, his mother is gravely ill, and filial piety is the most important of all virtues. Sending Lord He to preside over the irrigation works will not only fulfill his filial piety, but it will also benefit the country and the people. This is truly killing two birds with one stone. I trust that Lord He will not object." Yet another official spoke up. With 3 people speaking up, the other officials began to voice their support. "Your Highness, this subject objects. Lord, he is a bright minister, a second-rank official. Moreover, he has been in the imperial court for many years and is extremely familiar with the various affairs of the imperial court and the operations of the empire. Digging canals and constructing irrigation works will naturally benefit the country and the people, but this matter can only be handled by the officials of the Ministry of Works. There is no need for Lord He to personally go. There are big and small matters, and there are small and large materials. A great material is used for a great purpose, and a small material is used for a small purpose. Moreover, Lord He is not an official of the Ministry of Works. Not far from King Song, the Assistant Minister of War, Chao Qianzong, suddenly stepped out of the ranks. "Your Highness, this subject agrees with Lord Chao in opposing this matter. The civil and military officials all have their own positions and duties. This is the foundation upon which the imperial court can normally handle various matters. If the construction of water conservancy required the use of second-class officials, then if other places also needed to build water conservancy, flood control, or drought prevention, would they need to use second-class, or even first-class officials? If everything is handled this way, then wouldn't the imperial court be empty and all matters remain undecided? This lowly subject firmly opposes this matter." With Chao Qianzong taking the lead, another official from the King of Song's faction stepped forward. He Qingrong came from the Ministry of Works and knows everything about irrigation works. How can anyone else be like him? Moreover, filial piety is the most important of all virtues. If one doesn't even visit one's mother when she is seriously ill, they are not worthy of being a son. What right do they have to stand in the imperial court and set an example for all the officials? At this moment, the crimson-robed Minister of Rights, Pei Tsuani, suddenly stepped forward. Wang Chong coldly watched on, a cold light flashing through his eyes. Pei Tsuani was the Minister of Rights, as well as King Qi's subordinate. For King Qi to have him step forward at a time like this, it was clear that he was determined to succeed. King Qi, the Grand Preceptor, Li Linfu, and the First Prince. If even the position of Minister of Honor was replaced, then the King of Song's faction would truly be weak and powerless, finding it difficult to contend against King Qi's faction. More importantly, if they lost the assistance of a second-rank official like He Qingrong, King Qi's faction would have much more influence in the imperial court, allowing them to easily pass many matters. Moreover, Wang Chong recalled the information that the King of Song's spy had obtained from King Qi. It was clear that He Qingrong's matter was only the beginning. Once He Qingrong's position fell into the hands of King Qi and the Confucian sect, even more people would be replaced. The Confucian sect definitely had more tricks up its sleeve, which was why Wang Chong had personally come to court today. Your Highness. At this moment, a loud and vigorous voice resounded through the hall. At the end of the line, Wang Chong raised his robe and walked forward. This lowly subject proposes that King Qi personally oversee the irrigation works in Jiangnan. Chapter 1301. Rumble. In an instant, everyone was shocked, and the entire hall was in an uproar. No one had expected that Wang Chong would suddenly appear and drag King Qi down with him. Wang Chong. The King of Song and Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianxiong were also stunned. It was clear that Wang Chong had not discussed this with them beforehand. Bastard! King Qi was stunned at first, but he quickly came to his senses. He clenched his teeth, his expression savage. This court discussion had been sent to the court in the form of memorials. As an assistant minister, the King of Song had clearly seen it. But even though He Qingrong's matter had been leaked, King Qi was not worried. He had already arranged everything. Minister of Rights Pei Tsuani was an important chess piece, but he had never imagined that Wang Chong would act so unconventionally and drag him down in front of all the officials of the court. Wang Chong, have you lost your mind? This king is a descendant of the Emperor of Heaven, of noble status. You actually want me to undertake irrigation works? King Qi was flustered and exasperated. The fight between the two from the penal court had caused such a huge uproar that almost all the officials of the court knew about it. Now, Wang Chong was attacking him in front of all the officials, even suggesting that he, a grand prince, should undertake irrigation works. This was an undisguised humiliation. This made King Qi hate Wang Chong to the bone. I heard that King Qi has recruited talented people from all over the world and is humble and eager to learn, even dabbling in irrigation works. Back then, you even personally invited Minister of Works Zhang Lianzhong to your residence. Could it be that King Qi didn't invite Lord Zhang to discuss irrigation works? Wang Chong glanced at Zhang Lianzhong and said indifferently, "You." King Qi's expression froze, and he was momentarily speechless. Nearby, Minister of Works Zhang Lianzhong's expression also trembled, fear appearing on his face. According to the previous arrangement, after Pei Tsuani, the Minister of Rights, it would be his turn. The two of them would work together to put pressure on He Qingrong to leave the court. However, after hearing what Wang Chong said, Zhang Lianzhong couldn't help but take a step back. He couldn't even say a word. Otherwise, as Wang Chong had said, he would be suspected of colluding with the Prince of Qi. For a moment, the entire hall was silent. Looking at Prince Qi's reaction and then looking at Minister of Works Zhang Lianzhong's reaction, even the slowest person understood what was going on. It was obvious that the two of them had colluded long ago. Wang Chong had said that the Prince of Qi and Zhang Lianzhong were discussing the irrigation works in the residence. It was likely that the Prince of Qi had no choice but to admit it. Bastard! There will come a day when this king will dismember you into 1,000 pieces. King Qi's eyes were filled with hatred and ruthlessness. Good. Wang Chong, this king knew that you had your reasons for doing this. You wouldn't speak without thinking. Next to the coiling dragon pillar, the King of Song was the first to react. He finally understood why Wang Chong had interrupted Minister of Rights Pei Tsuani. Not even the king of Song knew that King Qi had recently colluded with Minister of Works Zhang Lianzhong to pull him to his side and deal with He Qingrong. It was obvious that his subordinates had found out about this. Your Highness, this lowly subject believes that it is best to find someone else to manage the irrigation works in Jiangnan. As for He Qingrong, filial piety cannot be abandoned, but the affairs of the state cannot be abandoned either. This subject proposes that he be allowed 2 months of leave to return to his hometown in Jiangnan and visit his mother, the Lu matriarch. Once his mother recovers, he can return to the capital. Wang Chong said. He Qingrong's mother had only occasionally caught a cold, and it wasn't anything serious. He could return to his hometown to visit his mother and then return to the court. This was also the best compromise they could come up with. A cold was not a serious illness. Once He Qingrong returned to his hometown, it would naturally be resolved. He Qingrong, what do you think? Suddenly, a voice resounded through the hall. The Grand Preceptor, who had remained seated on the armchair this entire time and had his eyes closed, suddenly stood up and spoke. This sudden action caused everyone to be taken by surprise. The conflict between Wang Chong and King Qi had attracted everyone's attention, and no one had expected the Grand Preceptor to speak at a time like this. And unlike before, the Grand Preceptor was extremely calm today, far less intense than before. His first words did not even mention that He Qingrong should go to Jiangnan to manage the irrigation works, but asked for his own opinion. He Qingrong had always been a member of the King of Song's faction, so if the Grand Preceptor were to ask for his opinion, He Qingrong would have never agreed. But for some reason Wang Chong had a bad feeling. Almost subconsciously, Wang Chong turned his head and saw that He Qingrong's head was lowered. He did not immediately reject the idea, but appeared to be very worried. This lowly subject, He Qingrong hesitated, unable to speak for a long time. At this moment, the ill feeling in Wang Chong's heart intensified. Not good. Wang Chong's heart instantly sank. If He Qingrong truly did not want to go, he could have directly refused. There was no need for him to hesitate, but there was clearly a problem in the current situation. Your Highness. Wang Chong's heart sank as he subconsciously turned in the direction of the King of Song. At almost the same time, the King of Song also turned in Wang Chong's direction, his eyes filled with intense shock. He Qingrong was a member of the King of Song's faction, and Wang Chong had always avoided delving too deeply into the King of Song's faction. But it was clear that something had gone awry. The situation before him was completely different from what the King of Song had told him. The shock in the King of Song's eyes clearly illustrated this point. It was clear that he had also sensed the change in He Qingrong's body. Your Highness, this lowly subject is willing to go to Jiangnan and replace the imperial court in repairing the irrigation works. Finally, He Qingrong opened his mouth. His words shocked everyone present. Jiang Yunrang and the others dropped their jaws in shock, while the other generals trembled as if they had been petrified. They had done all they could to help He Qingrong deal with King Qi's group, but they had never imagined that He Qingrong himself would run into problems. In truth, it wasn't just the generals who were stunned. Even Zhou Taiqin and the other civil officials were stunned by He Qingrong's reply. This was truly unexpected, but just as everyone was busy arguing, He Qingrong gave them all a surprise. All the ministers have heard it. Lord He, since you have made up your mind, then this prince will approve the request. Within 5 days, make your preparations and immediately set out for Jiangnan. The prevention of floods concerns the lives of the nation and its people, involving millions of civilians. The project is enormous and will take a long time. You must do your best to handle this matter properly. Before Wang Chong, the King of Song, and Zhangzhou Jianxiong could say anything, the first prince, seated on his throne, lost no time in making the final decision. Many thanks, Your Highness. I, He Qingrong, will definitely not let you down and will do my utmost to complete this task. There was dead silence in the hall. He Qingrong bowed respectfully under the gazes of all the officials. At that moment, Wang Chong felt like He Qingrong had exhaled as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders. But a moment later, He Qingrong raised his head, and Wang Chong clearly saw him straighten his body and glance in the direction of the King of Song, an apologetic look in his eyes. In a flash, Wang Chong seemed to realize something and fell silent. Although He Qingrong's betrayal had caught everyone by surprise, there was no doubt that he had his own difficulties. I miscalculated. A moment later, Wang Chong turned to the Grand Preceptor. He would never believe that the Grand Preceptor had just casually asked a question. It was clear that he had already known He Qingrong's answer before he had even spoken. If the Grand Preceptor and King Qi had not done anything, Wang Chong would never believe it. The main event is coming. Wang Chong glanced at the Grand Preceptor and King Qi. The first prince's words had been too timely, and in just a few moments, He Qingrong's departure from the capital had been set in stone. No one could change it. But Wang Chong was well aware that this was far from over. He Qingrong's departure was only the formal prelude to today's court debate. Everything had only just begun. As expected, a moment later, Wang Chong heard a voice at his ear. "Your Highness, this subject has a memorial." The Minister of Light, He Qingrong, originally held a position in the Hall of Governmental Affairs, responsible for filtering out and handling the memorials. With He Qingrong's departure, this position immediately became vacant. The matters of the imperial court cannot be neglected for a single day. This lowly subject proposes that a new candidate be elected to replace Lord He's position and handle the matters of the court. Minister of Works Zhang Lianzhong suddenly stepped forward. Buzz. With these simple words, the mood of the court instantly changed. The dispute over He Qingrong's position was so intense not just because He Qingrong's departure from the capital would leave the position vacant, but also because both sides were vying for this position. Whoever could replace this position would have a much greater say in the court. Your Highness, this subject has a memorial. The governor of Zhang Prefecture, Ge Huan, possesses outstanding abilities and has governed the region for many years. This subject recommends Ge Huan to replace He Qingrong. A voice suddenly broke the silence. King Qi had been fuming a moment ago, but now he took in a deep breath and immediately calmed down. He then respectfully bowed to the first prince. King Qi did not even try to conceal the fact that He Qingrong's position was at stake, and he immediately took action. Upon hearing King Qi's words, the Grand Preceptor, Li Linfu, and the first prince all imperceptibly creased their brows. This was not the result of their previous discussions. The governor of Zhang Prefecture, Ge Huan, had always had a close relationship with King Qi. In the previous court debates, King Qi had appeared several times to try to get Ge Huan into the imperial court. No one had expected that King Qi would once more take advantage of this opportunity to get one of his own people into the imperial court. Once his own interests were involved, King Qi's selfishness and disregard for the bigger picture would once more erupt. Your Highness, this subject objects. He Qingrong is only leaving the capital to work on the irrigation works, not to be dismissed. There is no need to find someone to replace him. Moreover, Ge Huan only has experience governing provinces and counties, not the ability to handle the affairs of the entire empire. This lowly subject believes that this matter is unacceptable. Your Highness, please reconsider. Chapter 1302. The Prince of Qi's selfishness was too heavy. When considering matters, he would never consider the state, always putting his own interests first. His current influence was enough to give others a headache. If he were to add Ge Huan to the mix, who knew what state the imperial court would be in? Most importantly, other than Wang Chong, only the king of Song could oppose him and ruin his plans. Ridiculous! This is utter nonsense. King Qi hurriedly retorted upon hearing the king of Song's objection, his expression agitated. Which member of the imperial court has any experience? Didn't they all start from nothing and climb up step by step? If we don't give others a chance, how can we raise new talents? Ge Huan's achievements are outstanding, and this king believes that he can definitely do it. King Qi was doing all he could to get his own man into the imperial court. But this king believes that this cannot be done. A voice suddenly came from below. Wang Chong sneered at this sight and walked out. King Qi wanted to use this chance to insert his own man into the imperial court, but this could not be done. Ge Huan might be good, but there were many people in the Tang dynasty who were stronger than him. Wang Chong. King Qi angrily roared, his eyes going red. This was already the second time Wang Chong had ruined his plans. This subject also feels that Guhuan is not the best candidate. Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianqiong suddenly stepped forward and spoke. The matter of Minister of Light He Qingrong's departure from the capital was already set in stone. All they could do now was do their utmost to prevent King Qi's men from occupying He Qingrong's position. This subject agrees. This subject also agrees. In a flash, the generals and King Song's subordinates all excitedly agreed. King Qi's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Your Highness, if Guhuan is not good enough, this old subject has someone to recommend. As the two sides faced off and the atmosphere in the imperial court was at its most tense, another elderly voice resounded through the hall. The Grand Preceptor spoke once more. This old official has interacted with him. In this old official's eyes, his ability is completely capable of entering the Hall of Governmental Affairs and replacing He Qingrong's position to handle state affairs. The Grand Preceptor's words once more left everyone dumbfounded. Even the King of Song and Zhangqiu Jianqiong were dumbfounded. On the other side, Wang Chong suddenly had an extremely ill foreboding. Ever since his conflict with Wang Chong in the imperial court, the Grand Preceptor had not attended court for a very long time, much less participate in court discussions. Moreover, from the Grand Preceptor's questions about He Qingrong's situation, it was clear that he had come prepared for this court session. Wang Chong did not believe that the Grand Preceptor was just speaking thoughtlessly. Who is it? King Qi's eyes went red, and before he realized that it was the Grand Preceptor who had spoken, he immediately bellowed. But before King Qi could think too much, a thunderous voice came from outside the hall. What are you waiting for? Me. It was a simple word, but it was brimming with confidence. Even in the face of all the important officials of the imperial court, he would still be fearless. With this word, a flurry of footsteps came from outside the hall of Taihe, instantly attracting everyone's attention. All the civil and military officials, including Wang Chong, turned to the source of the voice. A moment later, there was a flash of light at the entrance to the hall, and a figure, dressed in snow-white robes, strode into the hall, his head held high and his chest puffed out. His steps were relaxed and his bearing elegant, giving off the feeling of an orchid in a deep valley. At least half of the civil officials in the hall lowered their heads at the sight of this figure, a look of respect appearing in their eyes. Wang Chong had not cared at the start, but when he saw this person's appearance, Wang Chong's body trembled like he had been struck by a lightning bolt. Li Junxian. Wang Chong stared in disbelief at this familiar figure. He had never imagined that the person the Grand Preceptor was recommending was none other than the leader of the Confucian sect that he had met in Drunken Moon Pavilion, Li Junxian. At that moment, an intense sense of conspiracy surged out of Wang Chong's mind. From the irrigation project to He Qingrong's departure, to King Qi's recommendation of Guhuan, to the Grand Preceptor's recommendation of Li Junxian, all of this flashed through his mind with astonishing speed. And when he thought about how the King of Song's spy had learned from King Qi that the structure of the imperial court was about to be completely changed, Wang Chong suddenly understood. At the same time, Li Junxian stood at the entrance of the hall, his eyes sweeping over the crowd of officials before finally settling on Wang Chong. King of foreign lands, we meet again. Buzz. The hall fell into an uproar, countless generals turning to look at the white-robed young man. From the way the white-robed young man spoke, it was clear that he knew Wang Chong, but there was clearly a hint of hostility between the two. This was definitely not a friend, not a foe. The Grand Preceptor's recommendation and the fact that he could make an enemy of someone like the King of Foreign Lands meant that this white-robed man at the entrance of the hall had an extraordinary background. At the door of the hall, Li Junxian pretended not to see or hear anything, paying no attention to the gathered officials. His expression relaxed, he smiled, and his eyes met with Wang Chong's. At that moment, countless bolts of lightning flashed through the air. The hall was deathly still, and even the neutral officials seemed to realize something and sense the hostility between the two. It's him! Next to the coiling dragon pillar, the King of Song also seemed to sense something, his eyes widening as he stared at that snow-robed figure, his expression turning grave. Although he had never seen Li Junxian before, based on Wang Chang's description, the king of Song had already ordered someone to make a portrait of Li Junxian. This young leader of the Confucian sect had left an extremely deep impression on the king of Song, but not even the king of Song had expected that this leader of the Confucian sect, who had always been hiding behind the scenes, would personally appear in the imperial court. Nearby, Minister of War Zhangqiu Jianxiong reacted a little slower, but he also realized something. His eyes wandered between Wang Chong and Li Junxian, a look of bewilderment on his face. "Your Highness, this king objects. How important are the matters of the Hall of Governmental Affairs? Can anyone just enter?" A moment later, Wang Chong spoke, his expression cold and aloof. No matter what the Confucian sect was planning, he would not let them succeed. But Li Junxian only faintly smiled and said nothing. "Who said that he was just anyone? This is our junior minister of dependencies." Suddenly, a voice came from the other side of the hall. The Chamberlain of Dependencies, Fang Jingqing, suddenly walked out from the ranks and said with a serious expression, "So, as long as one receives foreign guests at the Chamberlain of Dependencies, one can handle the affairs of the Secretariat? When did the matters of the imperial court become so casual?" Wang Chong coldly said, "The Chamberlain of Dependencies was under King Qi's faction, so it was probably the best place to place Li Junxian in. Although he didn't know what the Confucian sect was planning, one would not visit a temple without a cause. The imperial court was the center of the entire Tang dynasty, the entire Central Plains. Li Junxian had done everything he could to enter the imperial court, even going so far as to remove He Qingrong. Of course not, the Chamberlain of Dependencies. I forgot to tell everyone that besides being the junior minister of dependencies, he is also this old subject's last disciple. This old subject is untalented, but in his later years he still hopes to do his best to serve the imperial court. Coupled with this child's outstanding talent, I took him in and devoted myself to teaching him. Every day, all the memorials in the imperial court will pass through this old subject's eyes. Over the years, this old subject has taught him everything he has learned. And this child has not let down this old subject's trust, surpassing the master. Right now, he is completely capable of participating in the affairs of the imperial court. Your Highness, this old subject recommends that this child take over He Qingrong's position. With him participating in the affairs of the Secretariat, there will be no slip-ups. On this old subject can guarantee his reputation for the rest of his life. Your Highness, please consider." The Grand Preceptor stood in front of the Grand Preceptor's armchair and spoke at a leisurely pace. With a solemn expression, he gave a deep bow to the imperial court. This was the third time he had taken action in today's imperial court. The words "this old subject's last disciple" caused Wang Chang's heart to turn cold and sink to the bottom of a lake. The Chamberlain of Dependencies' recommendation, the Grand Preceptor's guarantee, and the Grand Preceptor's disciple. For the sake of recommending Li Junxian, the Grand Preceptor had even said that he would guarantee his reputation for the rest of his life. Wang Chong didn't know if Li Junxian had truly learned all the skills of the Grand Preceptor and possessed the ability to manage state affairs, but if what the Grand Preceptor said was true, then the Confucian sect, the Grand Preceptor, and King Qi were planning so far ahead that anyone would be alarmed. But the more this was the case, the more Wang Chong could not allow them to succeed. The imperial court has the rules of the imperial court, and everything must be done according to the rules. Without any merit, not even the Grand Preceptor's disciple can reach the heavens in a single bound and enter the Secretariat. I will still say the same thing, not. Wang Chong sternly said. The King of Foreign Lands has spoken well. This old man just so happens to have something to announce. Not long ago, Li Shaoqing, Li Junxian, as an emissary of the Tang dynasty, reached an agreement with the other countries to have Uzun, the Western Turks, and Goguryeo agree to reduce their armies. Because Uzun suffered heavy losses in the previous war, it is reducing its army by 150,000, the Western Turks by 200,000, the Eastern Turks by 230,000, the Goguryeo Empire by 280,000, and the Meng Shizhao Empire by 300,000. Several days ago, The various countries formally notified the imperial court that all the reductions will be completed within 10 days. Suddenly, a voice came from another direction behind the Grand Preceptor, Prime Minister Li Linfu of the Great Tang. This caught everyone off guard. Li Linfu had not said a single word throughout the entire meeting, not even half a word. No one had expected him to interrupt at this time. What was even more shocking was the information revealed in his words. Boom. Chapter 1303. The countries are reducing their armies? How could this be? Did I hear wrong? Uzun is reducing their armies by 150,000, the Western Turks by 200,000, and Goguryeo by 280,000. How could such a thing be possible? These countries have always covetously eyed the Central Plains with wild ambitions. Even when we negotiated with them to maintain good neighborly relations and stop fighting, it was impossible. How could they possibly agree to reduce their armies? Prime Minister Li Linfu's words were like a stone thrown into a ripple. Everyone was stunned by Prime Minister Li Linfu's words. If these countries agreed to reduce their armies, this would be an unprecedented piece of good news. The threat that the surrounding barbarians posed to the Tang dynasty would be greatly weakened, especially when one considered that these countries were primarily cavalry, which would be even more advantageous to the Tang dynasty. In addition, in order to express the Tang dynasty's resolve to maintain good neighborly relations and never fight again, all the empires have decided to withdraw their armies by 300 li. While the officials were chattering, Li Linfu's voice once more resounded through the hall. Bzz. The people in the hall had already been shaken by Li Linfu's announcement, and Li Linfu's words pushed their emotions to a new peak. Lord Prime Minister, is what Sir says true? Countless officials turned to Li Linfu, and a few of them who were closest to him moved closer to him. If not for his status as Prime Minister, they would have long ago reached out to ask him about this matter. There is no doubt about this matter. The Hall of Governmental Affairs has documents from all the countries as proof, all of them stamped with the seals of their emperors. Li Linfu sternly said. As he spoke, he turned his head to look at the first prince in the main hall. The latter slightly nodded from his throne. It was clear that there was no doubt about this matter. Boom! In an instant, the entire hall was in an uproar. All the generals were stunned. To have the countries bordering the Tang dynasty reduce their armies by 200,000, perhaps even 300,000, was something that not even they had dared to imagine. This was truly subduing the enemy without a fight. To have the countries bordering the Tang dynasty lose nearly 1 million soldiers in the blink of an eye was undoubtedly a major achievement. It was no less than Wang Chong's Western expedition. No matter what Li Juanxian's background was, this was enough for him to enter the imperial court and participate in politics. Meanwhile, on the other side, Wang Chong was even more shocked than Jiang Yunrang and the others. Even Wang Chong was caught unprepared by the news that the countries around the Tang dynasty had reduced their armies to 1 million soldiers at the same time. How is this possible? Wang Chong muttered to himself. His heart was in turmoil, and almost subconsciously, Wang Chong turned to look at the king of Song and Zhangzhou Jianxiong. In their eyes, Wang Chong saw the same shock. Obviously, they hadn't received any news beforehand. This was a real heavy bomb. However, after the initial shock, Wang Chong's heart slowly cooled down. The Grand Preceptor, Li Linfu, and all the most illustrious figures of the imperial court began to stand up for Li Juanxian. Li Juanxian and the Confucian sect were clearly determined to obtain He Qingrong's vacant seat. Your Highness, Wang Chong wanted to say more, but a moment later, a familiar and soft voice rang out at his ear. Wang Chong, forget it. The Grand Preceptor, Li Linfu, King Qi, and perhaps the first prince. From the moment the irrigation works began, they had been planning for this moment. If what they said just now is true, then Li Juanxian and the Confucian sect have performed an enormous deed by reducing the armies of the countries. Although I don't like the idea of the Confucian sect taking over, I have to admit that their actions have been beneficial to the Great Tang, beneficial to the country, and beneficial to the common people. This contribution alone is enough for them to enter the central government. This is not something we can stop. The King of Song's voice was tinged with complex emotions. Public was public, and private was private. Although he was still deeply wary of the Confucian sect, Li Junxian and the Confucian sect had truly done a good deed by reducing the armies of the countries. Even though not even the King of Song knew how they had done it. Impossible! Given the personalities of the countries, how could they be willing to reduce their armies? Wang Chong messaged back. But the documents of the various countries have already been delivered to the imperial court. This matter is set in stone and cannot be faked. At the very least, Li Junxian and that Confucian sect truly did their best, and they even tried to do things that benefited the country and the people. This cannot be denied. Merit must be rewarded and mistakes must be punished. This is the rule of the imperial court, and it is also the law of using people. With this ability and the recommendations of the Grand Preceptor, King Qi, and the Prime Minister, he is already qualified to enter the imperial court and participate in politics. We are powerless to reverse the situation. The King of Song gave a long sigh, his voice tinged with helplessness. Today's defeat had been decided from the moment he had agreed to the irrigation works in Jiangnan. It was too late to make up for it later. Failure to win was not the fault of soldiers. This had nothing to do with Wang Chong. Wang Chong could hear the helplessness in the King of Song's voice and instantly fell silent. Li Junxian, come forward. Just at this moment, the first prince, who had been standing at the top of the hall like a towering mountain, spoke up. This lowly subject will go. Li Junxian faintly smiled, his sleeves fluttering in the wind, and he immediately walked forward. From start to finish, this court debate had been completely under his control. Perhaps Wang Chong and the generals believed that this matter could still be done, that they could still stop him. But to Li Junxian, from the moment he stood outside the hall, everything had been decided. Tut, tut, tut. Li Junxian's footsteps were relaxed, and his abyss-like demeanor and upright demeanor had left a deep impression on even the scholar officials of the imperial court and made them feel admiration for him. Tut. When he was still several steps from Wang Chong, Li Junxian suddenly stopped. King of foreign lands, it seems like your prejudice against me is too deep. Li Junxian glanced at Wang Chong, a smirk on his face. But before Wang Chong could say anything, Li Junxian had already flung his sleeve and brushed past Wang Chong. Behind him, Wang Chong stared at Li Junxian's back, his eyes as cold as ice. He had lost this round, at least on the surface. But Wang Chong was well aware that this was far from being so simple. The Tang dynasty was reducing the armies of the barbarians. If the Uzun and the Western Turks had sincerely wanted to reduce their armies and maintain peace with the Tang dynasty, and if they had not used any tricks in their negotiations, Wang Chong would have been sincerely happy. But wolves were wolves and tigers were tigers. Even if they retracted their claws, they could not change their nature to drink blood and eat meat. Wang Chong was keenly aware of this. If a peace treaty was useful, the Tang dynasty would not be at war with the Uzun and the other countries. If the Western Turks and the other countries truly loved peace, Emperor Taizong and all the other wise sovereigns of the Central Plains would have long ago resolved this problem. The Tang dynasty would have no need to expand its army or prepare for war. Li Junxian had no idea what he was doing. He had underestimated these countries, underestimated the hearts of men. Li Junxian, hear the decree. Beloved subject has served the Tang dynasty and the people of the country in your diplomatic mission. Thus, you have been conferred the title of Secretariat Advisor and sent to the Secretariat to participate in politics. The Grand Preceptor will assist you in the affairs of the court. The Bureau of Personnel will draft a document and announce beloved subjects' achievements to the world to demonstrate your achievements. The first prince said in a loud voice, I have already submitted this conferment to Imperial Father and obtained Imperial Father's approval. I trust that all subjects have no objections. At this point, the first prince shot a profound glance at Wang Chong. Wang Chong's heart sank. The first prince's words were clearly directed at him. In the entire imperial court, he was probably the most vehement opponent of Li Junxian, but Wang Chong managed to restrain himself. If he lost one step, he would lose every step. The news of the various countries reducing their armies had rendered all of Wang Chong's words useless. In the hall, the first prince quickly retracted his gaze. Li Junxian, the Grand Preceptor has high praise for you. Do not disappoint this king. Many thanks, Your Highness. Li Junxian will do all he can to serve the empire. Li Junxian stepped forward, waved his sleeve, and bowed in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Grand Preceptor, Li Junxian is your last disciple. You have also contributed greatly to his service to the empire by having the other countries reduce their armies. However, the Grand Preceptor is already a first-rank official and cannot be conferred any more titles. Thus, this king has decided to bestow upon the Grand Preceptor an imperial belt, 10,000 taels of gold, and an imperial token of the imperial household to show his service. Many thanks, Your Highness. The Grand Preceptor turned around and respectfully bowed to the ceiling of the hall. A few moments later, the court session concluded and everyone surged out of the hall. Your Highness, Qingrong has let Your Highness down in this matter. As Wang Chong and the King of Song walked out of Taihe Palace, the Minister of Light, He Qingrong, hurriedly rushed forward, his face covered in shame. For a moment, the atmosphere was deathly still. Brother He, in truth, whether you leave or stay, this king has no intention of blaming you. But just what happened? I remember that several days ago, when I met with Brother He said that he wanted to apply for 2 months of leave from the court to return to his hometown to visit his mother. He said that he would return in 2 months and would not allow the Prince of Qi to take advantage of him. However, at this point, King Song paused and gave a deep sigh. Victory and defeat were commonplace for soldiers. This was true on the battlefield, and it was also true in the imperial court. The King of Song did not care that he had lost this round to King Qi's faction. What he truly could not let go of was He Qingrong's attitude. When the Grand Preceptor asked He Qingrong's answer had caught everyone off guard. If they knew that He Qingrong had already made his choice, they would not have panicked and would have taken other measures. All was quiet. Wang Chong said nothing, only looked at He Qingrong. From a certain perspective, He Qingrong's attitude could already be considered a betrayal. Compared to an enemy's attack, one's own side's betrayal was far more troubling. Just what happened? Wang Chong straightforwardly said. A single person's attitude could not change so much. Wang Chong would never believe that the Grand Preceptor and the others had not played a trick in this matter. He Qingrong raised his head and finally couldn't help but sigh, a look of reminiscence appearing in his eyes. To tell the truth, before the morning court session, I suddenly received a letter. Chapter 1304. What letter? Is it from King Qi and the others? He Qingrong shook his head and smiled bitterly, a complicated expression on his face. It's not that complicated. They only sent me a letter from my mother. I am untalented, but I come from a large clan in Jiangnan. My mother is also from a scholarly family. She is well educated and learned a few words, so I can recognize that it is undoubtedly my mother's handwriting. Hearing this, Wang Chong and the King of Song exchanged glances. Suddenly, they understood something, and their hearts rippled. Your Highness, I know why King Qi and the others sent me this letter, and I also know what they are planning. But my mother was right. After I became an official in the imperial court, I rarely went back to my hometown for many years. Now that my mother is advanced in years, I fear that if I don't return, we will be separated forever, and I will not have another chance. If that happens, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Even if King Qi and the others had not interfered, I had already made up my mind to return home. This is my personal decision, and I hope that the King of Song will understand. At the end, He Qingrong couldn't help but sigh again and bow deeply. I understand. Hearing this, the King of Song sighed deeply. Filial piety was the most important of all virtues. Although He Qingrong's final decision was unexpected, it was also reasonable. Even the King of Song could not blame him. Brother He, just go. Don't worry, I won't blame you. Many thanks, Your Highness. He Qingrong's face was full of shame, and his head drooped even lower. This was also the reason why He Qingrong admired the King of Song so much. The King of Song's breadth of mind and bearing would forever be unmatched by others. He Qingrong quickly left, his back somewhat lonely and somewhat relieved. Looking at He Qingrong's back, Wang Chong also felt deeply moved. We have completely lost this round. He Qingrong has been in the court for many years. What transferred him back was not his mother's letter, but his longing for his mother deep in his heart. It was precisely because of this that they were able to make use of it. This plan is not something that King Qi could have imagined, nor could it have come from the hands of Li Linfu or the Grand Preceptor. The King of Song put his hands behind his back and let out a long sigh. That person is smarter than we thought. I'm sure that everything is part of his plan. Now that his wish has been fulfilled and he has successfully entered the imperial court, I'm afraid that the imperial court will enter troubled times in the future. In an instant, both of them fell silent. Just as he was about to reach the palace gates, a commotion suddenly sounded from outside. Raising his head, he saw a huge commotion at the entrance of the palace. A group of civil and military officials had gathered together and were rushing toward a certain direction, their expressions filled with respect. And in the middle of the crowd, there was a figure that was as white as snow, elegant and tranquil. He was talking with those people in a natural and unrestrained manner, giving off a feeling that he was a crane in a flock of chickens. It's the leader of the Confucian school. The King of Song raised an eyebrow as he subconsciously turned to Wang Chong. Wang Chong said nothing, his eyes narrowing as he stared at Li Junxian. At that moment, the two of them seemed to realize something. Your Highness, you go first. I will go right after you. Wang Chong suddenly said. His body was rooted to the spot, motionless. The King of Song nodded. I will wait for you outside. After saying this, he gave a deep glance at Li Junxian in the distance, then with a wave of his sleeve, he quickly departed. At the same time, Li Junxian said something, causing the surrounding officials to scatter. In a flash, only Wang Chong and Li Junxian were left at the entrance of the imperial palace. Without the other officials present, the surroundings were so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. For a few seconds, neither of them moved, as if they were waiting for the other to come. But a moment later, the two of them seemed to realize something and stepped forward at almost the same time. After another deathly stillness, the two once more stopped. A few moments later, Li Junxian seemed to think of something and grinned as he began to walk toward Wang Chong. At the same time, Wang Chong began to walk forward. King of foreign lands. This time, we are finally subjects of the same palace. Li Junxian was the first to speak, his expression relaxed. Even though they were enemies, if one put aside their different standpoints, one had to admit that Li Junxian truly did have an extraordinary breadth of mind and bearing. You've won this round. I didn't think that you would even be able to use He Qingrong's mother. Wang Chong jeered. Haha, don't you understand? In this round, we weren't the ones who made the decision, but He Qingrong himself. From the beginning to the end, no one was able to influence him. All we did was help him make the right decision. Li Junxian gave a carefree smile. Although I don't know how you managed to deal with the barbarians on the borders of the Tang dynasty, as subjects of the same palace and subjects of the Tang dynasty, I would like to remind you that a leopard cannot change its spots. In the 16th year of the Sui dynasty's day, the Sui and the Uzun signed a treaty, each side withdrawing their soldiers 30 li and promising not to attack the other. But before the ink on the treaty was dry, the Uzun took advantage of the Sui's retreat to launch a large-scale attack, killing more than 100,000 Sui soldiers. It was only in the 18th year of Day that they were able to take their revenge. In the 7th year of the last emperor of the Sui, the princess of the Great Sui married into marriage with the Western Turks. The two sides agreed to become allies and not attack each other. In the 12th month of the same year, the princess of the Great Sui gave birth to a son for the Western Turkic Khagan, and the princess was conferred the title of Empress Shao. The soldiers on the border believed that the Great Sui and the Western Turks were on good terms and that a son of the dragon had been born, so they let down their guard. They did not expect the Western Turks to launch a large-scale invasion at this time. The defeat of the Sui set the stage for the rise of the heroes that followed. This was only a matter of 200 or 300 years ago, and there were countless similar incidents in the past. The barbarians cannot be trusted, or at least not easily trusted. Moreover, the nomads are different from the Tang people of the Central Plains. Withdrawing from the army will not affect their fighting power. With a single order, they will immediately gather again. The idea of reducing the army is simply untrustworthy. Wang Chong sternly said, There's no need for the king of foreign lands to worry about this matter. I have already taken care of everything. Even without the king of foreign lands' reminder, I would have sent people to supervise the withdrawal of the armies of the Uzan, the Western Turks, and the other countries. Moreover, that was then and this is now. If one person commits a crime, will all their descendants be criminals? In the spring and autumn period, Yan Zhuoju was a great bandit of Liangfu, but didn't he also become a disciple of the sage of Confucius? Later on, his achievements were extraordinary. Just as I said, if you don't try, how can you know if you will succeed? Li Junxian faintly smiled. King of foreign lands, a great era has arrived. The hearts of men hate war, and peace and tranquility are the aspirations of the people, the trend of the times. War is no longer suitable for this era, and anyone who goes against this trend will be rejected by this era and history. King of foreign lands, you are the leader of the militarists. Only by withdrawing from the tide and knowing when to stop will you be able to protect yourself and end well. This is your last chance. Buzz. Wang Chang's pupils constricted, and his expression instantly turned cold. So this is a threat? The atmosphere instantly became incomparably tense, and the relaxed atmosphere from before had vanished without a trace. Across from Wang Chong, the smile on Li Junxian's lips slowly faded, and there was no more mirth in his eyes. If I were you, I would never say such a thing. I would treat it as a kind warning. There will not be a third conversation like this between us. For the sake of the Tang dynasty and the people of the world, I will not permit anyone to break this hard-won peace. If I discover that someone from the militarists is trying to break it, I will show no mercy. Li Junxian coldly said as he stared at Wang Chong. The Confucian sect's plan for the harmonious world had finally reached its most critical juncture. From the moment he ascended to the imperial court, nothing could be reversed, nothing could be reversed. At this time, anyone who stood in the way of the Confucian sect and the people of the world could not be tolerated. This was also the main reason he had been waiting here for Wang Chong. This is also what I wanted to say. At almost the same time, Wang Chong spoke, his eyes even colder than Li Junxian's. Li Junxian, the militarists do not exist to fulfill the harmonious world of your Confucians, but to protect the safety of the people of the world. Withdrawal of troops, peace talks, agreements with the barbarians. You have no idea what you are doing. Li Junxian, let me tell you one more time, everything you are doing is not to protect the world. On the contrary, you are transforming the richest empire into a defenseless land. I will not let you succeed. As long as I exist, you and the Confucian sect will never succeed. Even if you become a secretariat advisor, take He Qingrong's place, and enter the secretariat, it will be the same. Buzz! In an instant, the two of them looked at each other. Their gazes were as sharp as swords. At this moment, both of them understood that whether they were willing or not, there was no path of retreat between them. King of foreign lands, you will regret this. After some time, Li Junxian took in a deep breath and calmed himself. Is that so? Then I'll be waiting. After saying this, Wang Chong waved his sleeve, turned around, and began to walk away. That's right, let me tell you something. I hate being threatened the most. With these words, Wang Chong vanished from the palace gate. Li Junxian watched as Wang Chong left, his eyes turning sharp. Young master, it seems like the king of foreign lands has become our greatest obstacle in the imperial court. As long as he is here, many of our plans will be very difficult to carry out. A man wearing an azure Confucian robe walked out from behind Li Junxian and stopped several paces from him. A light breeze blew, rolling up his sleeves. In that instant, a black mark could be faintly seen. The azure-robed man stared in the direction Wang Chong had left, his eyes brimming with killing intent. He had clearly heard the conversation between Wang Chong and Li Junxian. In the end, this leader of the militarists, the son of heaven's disciple, had always been the greatest obstacle to the Confucian sect. Young master, you can no longer be soft-hearted. We've put in so much effort to reach this stage. Moreover, this is no longer a matter for you alone. The lives of all the Confucian sect are at stake. Even if you want to withdraw, it's already too late. No matter what, you can't allow him to threaten us again. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.